638.
So in life, throws you uh-ohs. Just say, better get Mako.
And head to Mako.com for an online estimate.
South Jersey's home of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
I am the voice of the voiceless.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
Now a step back by Shake. This goes. Shake Milton has come alive. And the Sixers lead by 11, 95-84.
That was Tom McGinnis on the call last night right here on 97.3 ESPN as the Sixers pull off a win over the Hawks. They tie the series up at 2. And we got you covered here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, and, of course, the live video is streaming Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. You out there. I don't know what the weather's going to do. It sounds like there's a thunderstorm coming. It sounds like the thunderstorm that is Shake Milton. You heard it last night with Tom McGinnis on the call. Boy, he came in like a whirlwind, like a tornado. 14 points in 14 minutes for Shake. We got a lot of calls from Shake last night. He was all over the place. How about this one?
Milton for 3, shot up and good. Man, you expected to go in now, and the Sixers pulling away.
You expected to go in now. That's kind of what happened last night. So much to break down in the game last night. We will do it all for you here on the Sports Bash. I want your comments, your questions, your engagement, your interaction. Many ways to do it. If you're watching the show live on the video stream, you can always leave your message in the comments section on wherever you're watching, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. If you are listening to the show on the radio, you can always text the text board, 609-403-0973. And, somebody texted in yesterday and said, hey, I don't know why you don't take phone callers. You're more than welcome to call if you would like. I certainly enjoy having some phone conversation, back and forth interaction. I just know in this day and age, people seemingly prefer to text message the show. But if you want to give a call and have a conversation about the game last night, give me your thoughts, I will gladly open up the phone lines for you. After games like this is what having the phone lines are for. So, and look, the phone lines are typically more active after losses, to be perfectly honest with you. But I think this series, there's so much to discuss. 609-573-3776, 609-573-3776 is the phone number if you want to jump on board via the phone. So we always will give you that option. I just, in 2021, I feel like most people prefer to text, but that doesn't mean you're not allowed to pick up the phone and give us a call that way. And we will certainly take your calls if you want to. There's so much in this game that I want to kind of compartmentalize, from that game last night. The Sixers get out to this raucous start. And, this is why it's like, oh, you got to get off to this great start. It's like, no. All these games are little tiny compartments within themselves. What happened in night 1 doesn't carry over to night 2. We get so fixated on this whole, like, oh, they're not playing well. Whatever happened last night doesn't matter tonight. And what I saw last night, there were some drastic differences in the game last night that really stand out about that game last night and where the series could be heading. So these are the couple of observations just off the top of my head. Number 1, all right, the number 1 observation would be, obviously, before I get to Shake Milton and the impact he had on the game last night, I want to take a look kind of at the starting lineup and break down what those guys' impact were last night, because they got off to this great start, and the Sixers certainly made adjustments in the game last night, right? When we talk about a coach's impact and a coach's role, There's where the coach's impact does come into a game. They made the adjustments. Can your players, all right, now when you make the adjustment for them, can they, what can they convert? Can the players get done? Okay, I made the coach made the adjustment. Now the players need to be able to convert that adjustment. Execute is the word I'm looking for. Thank you, Josh. Can the players execute the coach's adjustment? And the Sixers players were able to do that last night. So here's my couple observations. Seth Curry last night. Seth Curry right now, other than Joel Embiid, who we'll get to in just a minute, Seth Curry has been the MVP for the 76ers. He stepped up in game one, had a monster night. Now they lose, so that gets lost in the sauce. He had a great game last night, Curry again. 5 for 5 he was at one point from three-point range. He missed his last one, so he goes 5 of 6 from three-point range. But Curry is having a great series shooting the basketball, and you hope he doesn't cool off. So Curry with a huge game. Tobias Harris off to a great start last night. Much more like the Harris of the regular season. And then later on in the game, or in the middle of the game, when the game kind of got tight again, Harris kind of reverted back, and then he kind of came back. So I thought Harris played a solid game last night. I wouldn't say he was, there's Tobias Harris. He was back. He played a solid game. He can be better, which is positive. I think that's a positive. The rest of the starting lineup, Danny Green having a rough series, shooting the ball. He was 1 of 5. He did not shoot the ball very well. Had some looks, didn't get the shot to fall. If Danny Green can get the shot to fall, I think the Hawks, if Green and Curry can both shoot the ball at the same time the way Curry's going, it's going to be c'est la vie for the Hawks. But that being said, Green's not shooting the ball well, and I think that's why you saw him 26 minutes last night, and Thibault got 24 minutes last night. And one of the big adjustments was, obviously, Doc Rivers went from the start of the game with Ben Simmons on Trae Young. So, to me, that adjustment is the storyline, is that he makes the decision, hey, Ben Simmons, and this is where it's a controversial one. Because I imagine there are people that are looking at Ben Simmons' offensive numbers. 3 shots, 0 of 2 from the free throw line, 4 points. Really? I would imagine the message from Doc Rivers was focus on Trae Young. Don't worry about scoring. And I know that's going to tick people off, but what did we say before? The Sixers scored 118 points. Why does it matter where it came from? And we've said all along, the recipe for the Sixers to win is similar to what you saw last night. Monster games from Joel Embiid. Not 40-point games. We're saying 30, 28, 30. Tobias getting his. Curry and Green, those guys hitting threes. Milton comes off the bench last night. It is not depending on Ben Simmons to score. But what you got from Ben Simmons last night on the defensive side of the ball really is the difference maker in that game. Now, you could say that he made a big difference in the game and still needs to provide more on the offensive side. I thought last night there were times when Simmons was almost in the way. A lot of times I think he controls the tempo of a game. I don't think that was last night. I thought early he did a decent job. He did a great job getting him out running. But in the middle of that game and then late in the game, and then really after Milton went nuts, it almost felt like Simmons was in the way. It was almost like, all right, let's just let Milton kind of finish this thing out. And I think Doc Rivers, who, he had that controversial back and forth with Kevin Kincaid from Crossing Broad the other night. He says, I'm going to sit Ben Simmons. Are you kidding me? Well, late with 3 minutes when the hack of Ben started, he did just that. Mike, I'm wondering if he would have done that had Milton not been going bananas, because he sat Milton, and it was almost like the team kind of hit a rut again. So he put Milton back into the game. And look, there's the blurry message there of they're starting to hack a Ben. He misses both. 3 minutes left in the game. Now he's saying, well, I had a timeout left. How cool is that I had this timeout? Nah, that was a BS answer by Doc. Come on, dude. I mean, seriously. You took him off the court for a couple of reasons. He missed the 2 free throws. Your team has a lead. You didn't need him out there with the lead as big as they had. And quite frankly, Shake Milton was providing the spark. I mean, he was excellent last night. It'll be the Milton game. I mean, the Shake game, whatever you want to do. Where were you for Shake Milton's night? He saved the season basically there. Because the Sixers are absolutely, there was a fight a couple of years ago. I say a couple of years ago. It was, what year was that fight? I don't know. I have the pass up there. That Klitschko-Peters fight at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. And Klitschko gets knocked down by Peters 3 times in that fight and still won by decision. I mean, that's almost unfathomable. We talk about corrupt judging all the time. But in that one, it was actually solid. 2005 is that fight. And in that fight, Sam Peters was the highlight. He was the ESPN Sports Center highlight. He knocked Klitschko down 3 times, but Klitschko still won the fight. In this one, the Sixers were like Sam Peters. They knocked the Hawks down 3 times, and the Hawks just kept coming back and coming back and coming back. The only difference is the Hawks weren't Klitschko. They didn't have the name value to get the call from the judges here. Because for God's sakes, they just wouldn't go away. But there was a couple of reasons why they were not able to get over the hump. One, big shots as they got close. Every time they got close, Milton hit a big shot. Every time they got close, Embiid just absolutely. Now, there was one part of the game, see what you guys think. I thought Embiid almost lost trust in everybody out there. It was almost like Embiid said, I'm going to do this all by myself. And that had me worried for a little bit. I thought Embiid was going to kind of hit a wall, run out of gas, just lost trust in everybody out there. I mean, he's shooting off 1 foot, spinners, back off. I mean, it was crazy, some of the stuff he was shooting in that third quarter. They needed every bit of Shake Milton and what he brought because Embiid lost faith in the rest of his teammates for a stretch there. But the collective effort last night, I thought George Hill provided some nice minutes. Simmons with the difference-making defense, but Joel Embiid was the MVP. And I said it yesterday, once they named Jokic the MVP, I went right to the DraftKings Sportsbook app. I used my code 973. Well, I didn't use my code because I already used it at the beginning, so I can't use it again. But you could use it. And I bet Joel Embiid on the over. I mean, that was the easiest money you were ever going to get. Joel Embiid absolutely dominated that game last night. There was just no answer from the Hawks. They have no answer for him. They cannot stop him. He is absolutely unguardable. They are trying everything. Much like the Sixers in game 1. All right, what are we going to do with Trae Young? We got to figure something out. The Sixers have an answer. The Hawks simply do not. They just don't have an answer. And Charles Barkley said before the game, Embiid is irrelevant in this series. He scored 39 points and they lost. And I'm looking, Charles, are you kidding me? And his reasoning is the Hawks have better perimeter players, which he's not wrong about. It shows you how good Joel Embiid is. To call Joel Embiid irrelevant is almost ignorance at its top level. He's the only reason you're relevant. Joel Embiid is that good. I don't think people understand. When we talk about which teams can win the title, you have to have the best player on the best team. If you do not have a player that at the end of the line, you can say with all your heart, that guy's the best player on the best team. That team can't win. Kevin Durant can be the best player on the best team. We've already seen that. Kawhi Leonard can be the best player on the best team. Other than that, there's nobody else in the tournament that has ever proven they can be the best player on the best team. Not Donovan Mitchell, not Chris Paul, not Devin Booker, not Nikola Jokic, not Giannis Antetokounmpo, and not Joel Embiid. But I think we all realize that Joel Embiid can be the best. And by the way, not Trae Young, as you saw last night. Young, look, he's very good. But as I told you yesterday, make Young shoot. Make him be the one that shoots the threes. He was 1 of 7. He's not a good three-point shooter. He's an electric player. If you watch SportsCenter, you'll see Trae Young do a lot of crazy things. But if you watch him all season long, one thing you know is he's not a good three-point shooter. But, man, Huter just, oh, my gosh, he just wouldn't miss it. Felt like every time he had a chance to bring that lead back to 2, bang, he goes one down. Bogdanovich had a rough night shooting, too. He had a lot of big looks. But Gallinari last night, for God's sakes, what year is this? I mean, Gallinari hit 5 threes last night. But I told you, the Hawks need every bit of 23-pointers to beat you. They needed every one of their 23-pointers. So they had 33 points last night off of 3-pointers. If they had 23s the other night, that's 60 points from 3 points. So they were down 27 points from beyond the arc in game number 2. Big difference. Big difference. And a lot of that is Ben Simmons. I thought Simmons was really a difference maker on defense. Offensively, he did not have a good game last night. He did not have an impact the way that he normally does in terms of generating scoring. I thought he had a good first half with the fast break and getting it out and getting 3-point looks. But I'll tell you, in the second half, he was not there. And it was almost like Simmons decided, you know what, they don't need me tonight. I'll just put my feet up and watch this thing. It's maddening, absolutely. But as I said, the Sixers don't depend on Ben Simmons to win games. We act like they have to. They aren't the Milwaukee Bucks. They don't have to have Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Bucks need Giannis Antetokounmpo. They need him. The Sixers do not need Ben Simmons to win in terms of scoring. They need him to win for defense. They need him to win for generating points. They need him to win for other things. But they don't need him to score. The Bucks need Antetokounmpo to score or they are not winning. That's the big difference. And why I'm not like, dude, Ben Simmons, what was that game last night? It's a frustrating thing to understand that, man, he was, but I really feel like Doc Rivers' message to him was, you are going to defend. You want Trae Young, and Ben's like, dude, I want that challenge. I want that challenge to defend him. And he got that challenge, and he won that challenge. He won that challenge. Trae Young blitzed him the night before. He could not get into any rhythm last night. None. Couldn't get into a rhythm last night. 1 for 7, 3-point range. And quite frankly, I mean, he was 7 for 17, 6 for 16 on the night. He just couldn't get the looks. Simmons' size was a big problem for him. Now, he generated, 32 points on the minimum, depending on how many of those 11 assists were 3-pointers. Actually, it was 43 points. Now, some of those are, I mean, he had a big night passing the basketball. So he didn't have a terrible night, Young. He just didn't have nearly the same impact. So what did you guys see? Give me your thoughts on the game. 609-403-0973 is the text board. 609-403-0973. Hit me up on the text board if you're watching the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can leave a message in the stream. And, of course, you can give us a call at 609-573-3776, 609-573-ESPN. Jacob Fry says, I'm feeling good about the series. You know, there's a bunch of things that you saw in the game last night. Now, you might say, look, the Hawks did not play their best game, and they were down 16, I think, at one point. They were only down at 2 at the half. And they kind of hung around in that game last night, and you can make an argument that they hung around in that game and did not play their best game last night. Not play their best game last night. They did not shoot the ball. And by the way, they shot the ball 37% almost from three, which is pretty good in the end. But as we talked about the other day, if they just shoot their average from three, they're not going to beat you. They've got to be better than their average. They have got to be better than their average. That's how they can beat you. If at the end of the day, at the end of the game, they're at 39, 40, 41%, they probably win that game. I mean, the Sixers shot the ball from three-point range last night pretty darn good. They were 12 for 26. I mean, you had a big night from Milton. You had a big night from Curry. So you shot the three pretty well. They didn't shoot it. They shot it at an average clip. And that was really the big difference there. Part of that is Simmons was excellent on defense. He was not very good on offense. They didn't need him to be good on offense. They got the pick-me-up from Curry. They had a solid game from Harris. And they had an absolutely bonkers game from Joel Embiid. And that was really your story last night. So we'll break that all down. We'll get into it all. McGarry was there last night. His observations at 2:40 today. Jason Fitz. We have a wide-open NBA Finals. The Sixers have won the NBA championship out of every single team left in the field more recently than anybody else. 1983, the Sixers won the NBA title. Out of all the teams left, they have won the title most recently. How about that? So this thing's wide open. Paul Hudrick talks Sixers with us at 3:20. A lot of football today. Go to our website, 973ESPN.com right now and find out Pro Football Focus ranked the defensive lines in the NFL. Where did the Eagles' defensive front finish? It's at 973ESPN.com. All right, 2:26 on a Wednesday. Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Download the free mobile app and listen to the Sports Bash. You can watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm Mike Gill. At Mike Gill Show on Twitter. Follow me there. There's a play last night that I thought, we talked about yesterday. How can you exploit Trae Young more in the defense? And I thought the Sixers did a good job early in that game last night, kind of exploiting him on defense. If you watched early, they had Trae Young in this situation. They are basically having Trae Young defend Danny Green. And they use Danny Green in a situation where Green is the screener and it gets the switch with Trae Young. And Tobias Harris sees Young as the guy, and he just turns the corner. And this is where Simmons comes into play a little bit because he's down in the dunker spot being defended by John Collins. Well, Collins, he's kind of indecisive because he doesn't know what to do. Do I leave Ben Simmons? Because you know what's going to happen in that case. He's going to get a dunk. And if I don't close, Tobias Harris is going to get a layup. And they ran that play. Doc Rivers talked about it last night. They ran that play almost entirely in that first quarter to build that lead. They just kept going, and they got a great exploitation, I guess you could say, of Trae Young early in the game on defense. We talked about yesterday, how come they're not exploiting him on the defensive side of the ball? Well, I thought they did that last night. They went after, they found the defender. They made Young be the guy getting the switches. And that helped. I thought, what did Harris have 16 points in the first quarter yesterday? So, yeah, that was a big factor in the game last night was Harris ends up getting matched up with Trae Young a lot. And he has 16 points in that first quarter of the game. And it's a big lift for this team. Game 3, by the way, Friday night, 7:30 on 97.3 ESPN. So there's a couple days off now. They are off tonight and tomorrow. So 2 days off for the travel day to head back to Atlanta or head to Atlanta. I thought, the big thing is they got Tobias Harris going early. They got the mismatch on Trae Young. So those were two positives. They had Ben Simmons matched up with Trae Young. That was a positive and a difference maker. But the big thing is they just don't have an answer. They just simply don't have an answer for Joel Embiid. They just don't. And if Embiid, look, some of the things Embiid did last night, I kept texting we have a little text thing that goes on during these games. And I'm texting the guy. I said, every single time there was a stretch where Embiid just went bananas, right? Embiid was just unstoppable there in that third quarter stretch, I think it was. And he just refused to almost pass the ball. But just the way, spin away, reverses, off the back leg, this one comes into paint, back, fade away. Some of the stuff he was doing, it was crazy. He made a 7-footer, then he made a 28-footer. He got fouled. He got fouled again. It was just everything he did, they just could not stop him. And I remember I sent a text out. I said, you realize this man is 7 foot tall. 280 pounds. He should not be doing the things that he's doing. And by the way, he's doing it on one leg. He had a big jumper with 4 minutes left that put him up, by 18. It felt like they were kind of, because Trae Young hit that 3. He had a 30-footer. And that made it 110-94. And you're thinking, all right, Tobias Harris missed the layup. They come back down the other end. They miss a 3, and then Embiid hits that shot and pushes it back up. Then Embiid gets fouled again. Then he hits a 21-footer. His ability is unbelievable. It really is. You are watching something different, and you are watching something special. And here's what I'll say about Jokic winning the MVP award. I don't have any problem with Jokic winning the award. Do I think he's the best player? Like, if you told me you could have Jokic or Embiid, I'm taking Embiid every single time. And that's not a knock on Jokic. I think you'll see why. I think Jokic will be probably gone, Embiid will advance, and who knows what will happen here. But that's not the case. The MVP award, for LeBron James to have won the MVP award only 4 times in his career, and 0 times, okay? LeBron James has won the MVP award 0 times in his career, since 2013, excuse me. That award has become a participation trophy. It's become a joke. No pun intended to Jokic. I said last night, how many times has LeBron James won the MVP? 4. That's it. 4 times. You're telling me LeBron James is the best player in the league 4 times? That's it? 4? And he hasn't been the best player not 1 time since 2013. The MVP in the NBA has become a joke. It's a circus. They got fans voting. A fan voted. A fan voted for Derrick Rose to be the MVP of the league last night. That came out. How the hell are the fans getting a vote for MVP? Seriously, how are fans voting for the MVP of the league? So good job, Jokic. It's a great story. This guy was drafted 41st. He's the first Serbian-born player. I'm all on board with all that stuff. And quite frankly, I think he had a great resume. It wasn't better than Joel Embiid's resume by any stretch of the imagination. They were similar. I'm not saying that Joel Embiid's was way better or that Jokic's was better. No, they both had very solid resumes. But when push comes to shove, they said it last night. If Joel Embiid played as many games as Jokic played, he wins it. So you're saying that your award has become a participation trophy. And that's sad. Joel Embiid is flat out a better player than Jokic is. And Jokic is awesome. Awesome. Love watching him play. But in the end, he's not the MVP of this league. Are you kidding me? You tell me the guy that played on the 4 seed in the West is the best player, the most valuable player in the entire league? That's asinine. Why? Because he played 72 games and the other guy played 51? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. That's like the year that Brogdon won the Rookie of the Year. It's a participation trophy. For LeBron James to only have 4 MVPs in his career, 4, and 0 since 2013, the MVP of the NBA has jumped the shark years ago. So congratulations to Jokic. Who cares if you deserved it? Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. You know who deserves the praise? Joel Embiid, because he carried them last night. But there was others, and we're going to break it down. Mike McGarry was there last night for the Press of Atlantic City. Where were you for the Shake Milton game? Well, McGarry was in the building. Apparently, they didn't think the refs did a very good job last night in that building. I would tend to agree with them. The NBA has a big reffing problem, and I told you an easy fix for this. I'll get McGarry's thoughts on all of it coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. We're brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, now open, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, online, mattblattnissan.com. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Follow me on Twitter, at Mike Gill Show. I'm back with more Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 20 till the top of the hour here on the Sports Bash Wednesday. Game 2 last night saw a lot different style of play. Early, the Sixers got out and running. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City was there covering it. And, of course, Mike joins me Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at this time as we like to mix it up. Last night you saw certainly a different strategy. The Sixers made some adjustments, Mike, and obviously that changed the complexion of that game because you saw a much different Trae Young in that game last night. 1 for 7 from 3, 6 for 16, not as many looks. So right off the bat, you saw that the Sixers decided, Ben Simmons, your job tonight, don't worry about the other stuff. You're going to defend Trae Young.
Yeah, I thought Ben Simmons did a really good job on him. His length seemed to bother Trae Young, and it's what we talked about after game 1, right? You're not going to really shut down Trae Young. He still had 21 points and 11 assists in the game, but what you wanted to do was make him work for those 21 points and 11 assists. And like you said, he shot 6 for 16, was 1 of 7 from beyond the arc. So you're not going to shut him down, but you're going to make him work. And of course, 21 points, while still good, is not 35. So he did not impact the game 2 the way he did game 1. And Ben Simmons deserves credit for that.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. I mean, he didn't impact the game the same way, but they were still in the game late. Why were the Hawks able to get back into that game? And short of Shake Milton, and we'll get into that, really, every time they got close, Milton made a shot and then pushed it back. Why were the Hawks able to get back and then hang around?
Well, they got tremendous performances off the bench from Kevin Huerta and Gallinari came off the bench and shot them back in the game. I think they combined for 41 points. And like I wrote today or last night online, if I'm the Atlanta Hawks, I feel good after these first 2 games. I went up to Philadelphia. I split the games, in Philadelphia. Now we're going back to Atlanta. And if I'm the Hawks, I'm saying to myself, hey, I took Philly's right hand last night. Philly came out flying. They went up 18 points in that first quarter. I took their right hand, and I actually got back in the game and actually had a 1-point lead, late in the third quarter before it became the Shake Milton game. So if I'm Atlanta, I feel good right now going back home for game 3 on Friday night.
Obviously, you mentioned the Shake Milton game. I was, where were you, Mike? You were there. He makes that first 3. You could tell he had a different look about him. And Doc has said, look, he keeps working. We're going to go to him. But how surprised that they went to him in that moment?
How surprised was I? I was sitting up there last night, and the Shake Milton goes in the game, and I turn to the guy sitting next to me, and I go, "Why? Why is he going in the game right now?" I was stunned he was going in the game. Give Doc Rivers credit. He hits his first shot, which was the first points that the Philly bench had scored all game. And then I think the shot that really got him going was the 36-footer to sort of end the third quarter there. The one at the buzzer, that really got him going. And the whole team, the whole bench squad seemed to sort of feed off his energy because all of a sudden Dwight Howard came alive, George Hill came alive, Thibault made some shots. So, give Milton credit. I mean, he had played 8 minutes in the previous 6 playoff games and shot 4 for 19, but he comes in and gets 14 points at a point where the Sixers were kind of, they were looking for some for a jolt there, and Milton gave it to him.
If Milton can, he was their 4th leading scorer this year, right? If he can get back to the confidence that he brought to them in the regular season, how much of an addition is that? And how do you utilize? Because people were saying, you got to go with Maxey, and that kind of puts out Milton. So if Milton is back, how do you use him? Because we keep saying you got to shorten the bench, and now it seemingly means you've added another guy.
Yeah, obviously you have to, I would have a very short, patience with Shake Milton. I think he stayed in the game last night because he was hitting some shots and stuff like that. If you put him in Friday night, I think you got to put him in Friday night at some point and see what he does. But if he misses a couple of shots, I would get him out. I think one of the reasons that Doc put him in was, he felt that second unit needed, he took a shot, right? That second unit had scored 0 points. He needed somebody with the ability to sort of get them going offensively, maybe give them a jolt, a guy who could score. Maxey did not do that in the first half. So at that point where he might have gone to Maxey in the past, I think he said, well, let's try Shake here and see if he could get, the second unit going. He is one of the, guys on that bench who can score, has done it in the past, and he was able to do it last night. Hit 4 or 5 from 3-point range at a time when the Sixers really desperately kind of needed it.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Charles Barkley said before the game, Joel Embiid doesn't matter in this series. He had 39 points and they lost. The Hawks have better perimeter players. Does Joel Embiid matter in this series? He had 40 last night.
Of course he matters. I mean, he's averaging 39.5 points a game. He had 39, they lost, they had 40, and they won. I mean, it is a concern, though. If I'm the Sixers, I got to look at this and say, boy, Embiid averaged close to 40 points a game, and we split 2 games on our home court. I'm thinking to myself, what happens if Embiid only gets 25 or 26 or 30? Do they lose game 2? So, it is a lot to see if Embiid can keep this pace up of averaging nearly 40 points a game in the playoffs. It's really, a remarkable playoff run, and was kind of overshadowed a little bit last night by what Milton did. But Embiid has been no short of remarkable in the first 2 games of the series, and it'd be scary to see where the Sixers are if he only averaged 25 a game rather than 39.5.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, you're there, so you can kind of get that feeling. I'm watching this on TV. And it felt as if there was a time there, Mike, when Embiid didn't trust anybody else. And he was like, I'm going to do this all by myself. I mean, he was taking baselines, spin, fadeaways, reversals. It felt like almost watching Allen Iverson with his 2000 crew out there, where I'm just going to score every possession.
Yeah, I thought what the Sixers did well especially in that third quarter, was they ran a lot of pick and rolls with Curry and Embiid, and both, Curry was able to score and Embiid was able to score, and it opens up like a sort of what if Embiid was in a pick and roll with a Dame Lillard or a James Harden? How unstoppable would that be? Because the Seth Curry Joel Embiid pick and roll tandem was very, very effective, especially in that third quarter, and both Curry and Embiid had I thought really good games.
How about Curry? I mean, what he's brought to this team. He hit 5 out of 5 to open the game. He missed his last one, but he's shooting the lights out. You wonder when he's going to cool off. And if he does cool off, that could be a problem, because Green has been cool the entire, round so far.
Yeah, Green, did not play much last night. I think we expected that after game 1. They did not close with him last night. They had Thibault out there instead. And I got to admit, I've been surprised by Seth Curry. He's been more than just a standstill shooter, especially in this series, especially last night. Like I said, I thought that pick and roll that he ran multiple times with Embiid in that third quarter was very effective. So to me, Seth Curry has been one of the surprises of the postseason with his ability to sort of create out of the pick and roll and off the dribble there. He's been much more than just a standstill shooter, and that's been to the Sixers' benefit.
All right, and then obviously there is Mr. Polarizing Ben Simmons, and we mentioned him at the top. His defense was really a difference maker in this game, but 3 shots last night.
Yeah, I mean, as I wrote about, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I just can't, I just can't have after every playoff game, it be a debate on, how good Ben Simmons is. Look, I think most people have a feeling or a sense I am in the Ben Simmons doubters bracket.
Isn't this an example, Mike, of like the day before I said the Bucks need Giannis and he's limited, and that's why they're not good enough. The Sixers don't need Simmons to score because the Bucks need Giannis, and his limitations kill them. Simmons' limitations, the Sixers realized, got other people to do it for them.
Well, we're going to find out. They didn't need him last night, and I think last night, I saw a lot of people saying Simmons only scored 4 points. I think I would agree. On a rare occasion, I would agree with your take and the pro Ben Simmons people's take last night. It's tough to kill a guy when the team scored 120-something points, won the game, and he played an outstanding, I thought, defensive game on Trae Young. Having said that, I think it's the foul shooting, 8 for 32 right now in the playoffs. Doc Rivers, after, saying that to the media, treating the media like it was crazy for suggesting they pull him from the game during the Hack-a-Ben, pulled him from the game. So Atlanta.
Left.
What was that?
He had a timeout left. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. You know, he just happened to do it, you know. So he pulled him from the game for that reason. You know, again, my take on Simmons is we are going to see, let's get to the end of the postseason. Let's see how far the Sixers go. Let's see what Simmons does the rest of the postseason. And then let's make a judgment. Does his sort of unique skill set, does that serve the Sixers going to win a championship, or do the limitations, which, like, again, as I said, I think the other day, we're getting the classic Ben Simmons experience. We're getting the full thing, 100%. We got the defense. We got the missed foul shots last night. We got the 4 points. We're getting the whole experience, right? At the end of this playoff run, let's take a step back, see where the Sixers go, see what Simmons did, and then say to ourselves, hey, does what Simmons does contribute to them winning a championship, or do they need to make a move and you know, are his weaknesses costing them? Like you said, the way Giannis's weaknesses appear to be costing the Milwaukee Bucks right now.
Yeah, that is certainly that is rational in an irrational fan base where we have to react almost after every play, let alone every game. It's almost after every possession is, what is he doing? But look, for me, they score 118. I don't care where the points come from as long as they're being – now, on nights, if Curry's ice cold last night, then he's got to do more. If Curry makes 5, he's saying, let you keep shooting. You're right. This won't play out until one of these games or one of these series where somebody game plans and the game plan is a direct result of him costing them. That hasn't really yet.
And you know, when you're there last night, you were able to see, I mean, the Hawks weren't even pretending to guard him. I mean, John Collins was in the lane a full 6 to 7 feet off him. But they were able, you know, he played that way in the third quarter, and the Sixers were able to go to Curry and Embiid and run that pick and roll and score some points. And then Milton comes off the bench and he scores some points. So, you know,
early, you know, I was talking the other day about, you know, getting matched up on Curry. They were using Green in that little, and then using Harris to come off and getting him on Green on Young. And Harris just kept going. The problem was Collins can't leave Simmons because he's down in that dunker spot. So there's where Simmons kind of hanging out there, and there puts that defender kind of in limbo.
Right. You know, and like you said, they were able to score last night. Again, I am in the Ben Simmons doubter camp, but I'm also in the camp that says we can't go. It's almost like the Carson Wentz story during the football season. After every throw, people were debating, you know, pro or con. I think we've got to wait to the end of the postseason. You know, and then take a look and see at the overall picture of which way you want to go.
All right, so game 3 goes to Atlanta now. So you saw the first 2 here. If you're Atlanta going home, you feel good?
I feel very good because I split there. I have home court advantage now. And like I said, last night I took the Sixers' best shot and I got myself back in the game. And it really took an all-time performance from Embiid and you know, a performance from Shake Milton. We don't know if he's going to be able to duplicate that to beat me. So if I'm in Atlanta, I'm feeling good. But as we all know, that can change. I mean, this series will, you know, tip heavily in one team's direction based on what happens in game 3. And that happens a lot in games best of 7 series.
If you're Philly and you get out of that with a win last night and you're Doc Rivers, what do you guys have? What's your conversation with his coaching staff today?
You know, I think you got to continue to do what you did as far as bothering Trae Young, but you've got to figure out a way to get out on these shooters even more so and contest some of these 3-pointers. I mean, Atlanta, last night it was Gallinari that got hot. I think the Sixers have to recognize like who the hot hawk is early in the game and give more attention to him. The Gallinari was hard from the start. The Atlanta other shooter, Kevin Huerter, was outstanding. I think a concern for the Sixers is this Atlanta bench. And except for the couple of minutes that Milton had last night, how this Atlanta bench has completely outplayed the Philly bench in games 1 and 2. So that would be my big concern if I was Doc Rivers.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. He'll be back on Friday as we get ready for that game number 3. Of course, they have the travel day now, and you'll have that one for you. And I know you got a big local ball game. You're going to be doing double duty on Friday. Yeah,
absolutely. Probably one of the biggest high school baseball games I can remember in all the years I've been doing it. Ocean City and Mainland. It's a big deal when they play in any sport, and they're playing for a Group 3 title on Friday, 4 p.m. at Mainland, and that should be a huge baseball game.
Will you be able to get to Philly in time? Oh, the game's in
No, I
Atlanta.
don't have to get to Philly, and I won't be going to Atlanta, so I'll be all right.
You're lucky. All right, Mike McGarry from the Press. Follow him at AC Press McGarry, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, pal. I'll see you.
All right, see you down the road. Thanks.
All right, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline, and he'll be back on the Friday show as we will preview that Sixers Game 3. We'll see what news comes out along the way. Hey, look, you never know with this Joel Embiid knee. You might say, oh, my God, he just played 2 games and scored 79 points, and now he can't play in Game 3 because of that knee. I don't anticipate that happen, but stranger things have happened, right? He's got 2 days now to let that thing kind of sit. Coming up in the next hour, our Sixers insider Paul Hudrick was there last night. He'll give us his take on the Shake Milton game as he got a chance to write about that right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. We got plenty more to go here on a Wednesday. Last night, the Jazz with a big win as well in the NBA playoffs in that Western Conference battle. It's going to be an interesting, the LeBron face of the NBA seemingly is fading away. Who is that new face? We can get into that coming up here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN. Just after 3 on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. It was the Shake Milton game last night, the NBA playoffs. The new face of the NBA, who is it going to be? LeBron James' time is coming to a close. There'll be a new champion this year. You know the Sixers? How about this, Jason Fitz? The Sixers in 1983 have won the NBA championship the most recently out of every team left in the NBA right now. How amazing is that? A Philadelphia sports team who never wins, they have won more recently than the other 8 teams out there.
Look, I mean, which is astounding, but also this entire playoff process speaks to opportunity for the NBA. I mean, I think one thing that's happened over the course of the last couple of weeks is how many people that maybe haven't watched Trae Young have fallen in love with Trae Young. How many people that haven't watched Luka have fallen in love with Luka. And I mean, I'll just be real with everybody. I think there's such a limited amount of real estate at times to watch as much as we all have to watch to do this job that it makes it tougher for a lot of people to really hone in on a lot of teams. Like, you have to be able to consume a ton. So what happens in the playoffs is, even if it's people that you've been watching all year, you're watching closer. You're watching more intently. And importantly, in playoff basketball, you're seeing how guys work around specific game plans. So it becomes a star maker, a franchise maker. I think this is a huge opportunity for the NBA to give us something unpredictable, which is something the sport needs desperately.
Yeah, well, there's no LeBron, there's no Curry. You got Durant, you got Kawhi. So if it's not one of those two, it's either going to be Donovan Mitchell, Booker, Jokic, Trae Young, Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo. So you going with the field or one of the guys who's already won one? Durant, Leonard, or the rest?
So, I'd have to back down on my hottest take of the year, which was that Brooklyn was done, that continuity has to matter, and that you have to learn to play defense at some point. And so in order to take, I think that the biggest challenge out of the name that you just mentioned, I mean, KD obviously is the guy. We're all looking at this Brooklyn team saying, how are they making it look so damn easy, right? Like, it just is, it's absurd how easy they make everything look and how difficult what Milwaukee is trying to do. A good Milwaukee team, how just outmatched they've been throughout the course of the first 2 games. It's not that they lost the first 2 games. It's the way they lost them. And I think has everybody sitting there saying, good God. So it's hard for me to look at anybody other than Brooklyn right now, because Brooklyn's making everything look effortless. But I want to believe in everybody not named Brooklyn. That's the best solution. Like, the best answer for the NBA is still getting, Philly in the finals, because it gives you a big market, but it's not Brooklyn. It's not those guys. I think Philly versus Phoenix or Denver becomes sort of a matchup that maybe they can sink some teeth into.
What do you think, like, the whole, the process thing, and if they actually get there, is that a good thing? Just like, that'll be a storyline. Like, this is how they built this to get here. Will that, entice more teams to follow that method?
I think so. I think it also speaks to the easiest fix for every organization to make is the head coach, right? Like, you change the head coach and suddenly, like, that's the thing we have to remember. No matter how much we're talking about the young rising stars in the NBA, it takes multiple stars to win at the highest level. And on top of that, stars are harder to find than we think. So we see guys emerging and we say, oh, yeah, but you can have a Jokic and, that's an MVP player. You can find that anywhere. No, you can't. It takes time for a lot of these guys to develop. So I think what we've seen from Philly also has to partially be, hey, when you've got the stars, believe in the stars and stop listening to the outside noise about what stars are or are not capable of, but buy into the 2 guys that can build something around and build yourself a championship team. Just keep changing the other pieces and the coaches until you get it right.
It'll be interesting because LeBron is not going to play forever, believe it or not. Are these guys here the next guys? Is it Donovan Mitchell? Is it Devin Booker? Is it Embiid, Young, Jokic? I mean, are they the guys that are now constantly, for basically most of our lives? I mean, after the Jordan era and the Kobe era, you got this LeBron era, and you had Curry, LeBron, Durant, and Kawhi. That's about it. So are we going to get are these guys going to be the consistent new faces, or do you think this is the beginning of a wide open NBA? Because the NBA as a league has been a dynasty league.
Yeah, I think it's they're going to be consistent stars. I'll also add Ja and Zion to that, by the way, who are both, just spectacular to watch, right? There's just so much young talent coming in right now. The question is, how are they going to handle it moving forward? Devin Booker is a really good example. Booker and Ayton are guys that weren't getting a lot of love until CP3 goes there. Sometimes you just got to get the right mix to make the best chili, right? And so CP3 was the perfect amount of spice to that chili. And I think that we can look at that and say, hey, roster construction matters. But realistically, there are so many dynamic young players coming into the NBA right now. I think it's going to be harder to be dynamic moving forward because it's a little like the change we've seen in quarterbacks and the change we've seen in wide receivers. Like we see athletic guys coming in and making a difference quickly in the NFL. You're seeing so many athletic players come in right now. There's a shot for a lot of teams to have 2 or 3 really good players, and that's going to actually spread out some of the championships. I think we're going to be more in that era where, hey, somebody gets a couple here, somebody gets a couple there. It's going to be, which to me is more interesting.
Jason Fitz is with me, ESPN radio host Spain and Fitz, of course, 7 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN. You'll hear them. Now, it looks like you're in a hotel room. Are you, like, traveling?
Oh, no, I'm in Nashville. I'm just in the only room my wife gives me.
Oh, look at
that. I saw the Vandy shirt. Like, are we all in on, like, Tim Corbin putting out the excuse to miss class today for everybody to get ready for Vandy baseball? There's not a lot that you root for in Vandy athletics, but boy, Vandy baseball is just a juggernaut.
There's a kid that I coach baseball. He's from this area who's committed to Vanderbilt to play. So
good call.
Every campus I visited, I have a shirt from. So Vanderbilt is in the collection because I have been there before. That was years ago. But all right, so Jokic wins the MVP, okay? LeBron has not won an MVP since 2013. He only has 4. Does that diminish the value of winning the MVP?
Well, I think the MVP is diminished anyway, but yeah, that's got to be part of it. Look, the MVP is faulted in so many ways. Flawed, I should say. It's flawed in when the award's given out. I think it's just an absolute joke that we give out a regular season MVP award without waiting to see what's going to happen in the playoffs.
Doesn't every league do that, though? I mean, every league gives the regular season MVP award out.
But not every league trashes the MVP for not getting enough done. Look at the difference in the conversation around Aaron Rodgers. When Aaron Rodgers wins an MVP but not a Super Bowl, we fault the organization. When Giannis Antetokounmpo wins an MVP but not an NBA championship, then the talking heads come out and say, can he really get it done? Like, we put so much meaning in this particular sport to the MVP, but at the same time, there's not a single sport anywhere that values championships over everything the way the NBA culture does. So I think that's one of the flaws to the award. Also, there is some element of complacency. Like, look at when we watch Russ average a triple-double the first time, it's cool. The second time, that's pretty nifty. The third time, we're like, I don't know. Like, so that's what we do to all individual accomplishments. The MVP is devalued itself because of the way we cover the NBA.
How did a fan get a vote?
That's one thing I don't, and I'll say this as a Grammy voter, I take that responsibility seriously. Like, when I'm voting on the Grammys, and for anyone that doesn't know, when you vote on the Grammys, you can only vote on a particular number of categories. You have to prove your expertise to that category. They send you links to listen to everything. When I vote, you may not always agree with who I vote for, but I can stand up and tell you why I voted, how I voted, and what it means and why. Because it's a life-changing thing to say that you've won a Grammy. I think about the MVP. I mean, there are multiple Grammys given out every year. The MVP is so serious to me. It's a little like the college football playoff committee. I think not only does everybody vote, but everybody then sits up, explains why they voted, how they voted, walk you through their process of what they decided, when they decided, because that's the responsibility. When you're taking somebody's money, their career, you're taking their legacy into your hands, it should be done with a level of absolute seriousness that I don't think giving a fan a vote will ever allow.
Yeah, for Derrick Rose to get a first place vote last night. Even Ben Simmons got a vote last night, I think, for what came out. Jason Fitz is with me. Let me ask you this question. We battle a lot about the NBA coach, the role and the impact of the NBA coach. Now, I don't say they have zero impact, but I'm more on the side that, their impact is what it is. Like, Kenny Atkinson is a better X&O coach than Steve Nash is. Yet, the Nets deemed that Nash was a better fit for them. There are a lot of coaches who have good X's and O's, but Ty Lue wins because he has LeBron James. David Blatt gets to the finals because he has LeBron James. Vogel's the best one. He's in Indiana. He has a good team. He's a good coach. He's in Orlando. He has a bad team. He's a bad coach. He goes to the Lakers. He has LeBron. He wins the whole title. Now, LA wants Jason Kidd to be the coach because somebody got hurt. What is the role and the impact of an NBA coach?
I think there's two different types of coaches. You've got a playoff coach that's going to be an X's and O's person that really loves the chess match, and there's value to that. We see that a lot And frankly, we've seen a little of that from the Clippers this year. The chess match internally, I think, is important. But right now in today's NBA market world, more than anything, I think what we see from a coach are personality managers. I mean, one of the things that Steve Kerr did so beautifully during the run of the Warriors was make sure that everybody felt appreciated, something Phil Jackson did beautifully. And I saw a speech years ago that was being done for a business, and it was Herm Edwards doing it. And Herm did a whole speech for a company about how if you don't make a center feel valued when he hands that ball off, even if he's handing off to Tom Brady, and we all know Tom Brady is more important, you've got to find a way to make every person on that offensive line feel valued so that they give the best that they have every day. That sticks in my head when I think about NBA coaching in general, because you've got to manage personalities. You've got to manage the fact that guys that are used to being the guy may not be the guy in that situation. And you've got to make everybody buy into a philosophy that doesn't always mean the ball's in their hands. That takes a particular level of care and communication. And I think in today's NBA more than ever, because players come in and are so successful, so young, and because the environment that's being created around them matters, if they don't like it, they'll just leave. That really puts an impetus on current coaches of, hey, you better manage this locker room, manage this culture, and manage these personalities. The X's and O's, they'll figure out themselves in isolation basketball.
Yeah, because Steve Nash said the other day somewhere, it was in a Fox article or something, that he said, they didn't bring me here for my tactician. I'm a connector. My job is to connect with these players. And you hear these coaches, the guy in Indiana lasted 1 year. He couldn't connect. Apparently he was a great X and O guy, but couldn't connect with the players. Terry Stott's out there. He's been there all those years. He gets fired. And obviously they couldn't get very far. I'm sure he didn't play any defense out there, but, he had these great offensive sets. Dame Lillard's pretty good for a reason. Is he just, did Stotts have nothing to do? I don't know. I feel like the NBA coach is becoming more and more diminished almost as these players are like handpicking the guy that they want to hang out with more than the guy who really studies and teaches them the game.
Yeah, and look at Tibbs. I mean, everybody was out on Tibbs, and now Tibbs is coach of the year for New York, right?
I feel like a 1 year thing, though, that like next year you're going to hear this whole combustion of like they just couldn't handle him grinding on them.
1,000%. But that's what happens when you rely on personality management from your coaches. Boy, the minute that message starts to run a little bit thin, that's when everybody will jump ship. And that's the inevitability. I think that process is going to create more coach movement and shorter range for coaches. So, we're in an NBA world where you can be coach of the year 1 year and out of a job 2 years later. That is not normal in most sports. And that's partially because of the way they hire.
It's turning into hockey.
Yeah, 1,000%. Great analogy.
The NHL changes coaches every 10 minutes, it seems like. By the way, real quick, before we let you roll, Jason Fitz, do you care at all about the pitchers cheating? Because we care a lot about the hitters cheating, and now we don't care that the pitchers are cheating.
What I care about is baseball coming out and making a definitive statement about what's allowed, what's not allowed, and how they'll allow it moving forward. That's what I care about. Like the thing that I want through all of this is some transparency, though. Like if a pitcher wants to come out and instead of, Garrett Cole, like just absolutely fumbling the whole thing, just come out and be like, you know what? I'm doing what we're all doing. And until baseball says we can't do it, I'm going to keep doing it. I respect the heck out of that answer. That's what I want, is some level of transparency. I want baseball to come out and say, hey, we figured it out. They're using this sticky stuff. It's hurting the game. We're going to ban it. Okay, cool. Like much like steroids, sometimes you got to come out and make a very definitive statement. That's what I want. But until baseball has the what's to do that, I'm waiting for them to have that moment before I have any care about it.
This will be interesting. They said they're going to check 8 to 10 times a game to see if the pitchers have anything on their hats or gloves or anything like that. So
in a world where mound visits are being restricted, we're now going to let the game stop and then talk about game flow with 8 to 10 visits. I mean, this is just maddening.
Jason Fitz tonight, Spain and Fitz at 7 o'clock here on 97.3 ESPN. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, man. Good to see you.
Have a great week, my friend. Thanks.
All right. He, brought up the point about the whole baseball thing. I think if the pitchers are cheating, like that's something that needs to be discussed and looked at, much like the hitters, because we're on here and we'll take total, hey, we're talking about the hitters struggling and the game's horrible to watch. Well, these pitchers, if they're cheating, and that's adding to why. And I think you're going to see a little bit of change all of a sudden. Is there going to be more offense all of a sudden in the second half of the year? Is there just going to be all this offense because they have kind of hammered down on this? We'll find out. More Sports Bash coming up here on 97.3 ESPN. When we come back, our Sixers insider, Paul Hudrick, is here. He's got a great story up on the emergence of Shake Milton last night. Check it out now at 973ESPN.com. Sports Bash brought to you by JCPenney. Make way for Father's Day at JCPenney's Friends and Family Sale now going on through Sunday. Score the hottest savings, styles, and gifts for Dad at JCPenney. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. All right, last night, big win for the Sixers. They needed it. It was an early lead, and then they had to hold on for dear life at the end, and then they kind of pulled away late in the game. But you still had to bring Joel back in, close that thing out. Shake Milton, where were you on that night? Paul Hudrick was in the building for 97.3 ESPN.com, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline to take a look back at the Game 2 performance of this team. And it was a couple of different games there, Paul. I mean, they get out to this big lead. Atlanta comes back. You're only up by 2 at the half. Shake Milton gets inserted out of nowhere and really carries the team. Joel Embiid had an epic performance. And through all that, if you're Atlanta, do you feel like, hey, we would have lost that game, but we feel pretty good going home?
Well, I think once Atlanta won the first game, they had to feel good. I mean, you come away with a split in Philadelphia where the Sixers have been, really extremely good over the last few years at home, one of the best home teams in the entire NBA, if not the best. So, yeah, if you're Atlanta, I think you felt good already after game 1. Listen, and we talked about this before, Mike. I mean, this isn't the Wizards. This is a better basketball team. The Hawks are good. It's going to be a tough series. These games, this is the second round. Like, aside from what the Nets have been doing to the Bucks, I mean, this is generally the way it goes. These games are going to be close. It's going to be a tight series. So if anyone was expecting the Sixers to just kind of walk in this and just crush Atlanta, I mean, you're seeing that is not the case. And I mean, I still think the Sixers have a great chance to win this series. I would predict that they would win the series, but the game 2 is more what I expect the series to go down, where it's lots of runs back and forth, close through most of the game, with one team at the end really pulling away.
So what was the key adjustment last night? They hit 23s in game 1. Obviously didn't shoot the ball nearly as well. Didn't get as many looks last night. So how did the Sixers prevent these looks and cut down on the Atlanta threes?
Ben Simmons and Matisse Thybulle had an awful lot to do with it. They were both, they were the primary defenders on Trae Young for most of the night, and that made a huge difference. Also, they mixed their coverage up and they switched it up in a bunch of different ways. They call it like that double drag action where he gets, Trae Young gets the 2 screens at the top of the key. They didn't do it in game 1, but in game 2 they switched it and they had Tobias Harris. And listen, in that scenario, what you're hoping for Tobias Harris is just keep him in front of you. If he hits a 32-foot 3-pointer in your face, you live with it. You go on to the next possession. What you don't want is him getting into the paint, either getting to his floater game, getting to the rim, or like you just mentioned, Mike, finding his shooters out on the perimeter to get open looks. And I think that is the big thing, is they didn't let Trae Young they kind of let him do whatever he wanted, it felt like, in game 1. And in game 2, they made it much, 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 much harder on him to get to the spots on the floor he wanted to get to. And again, part of that is Ben Simmons and Matisse Thybulle being the primary defenders, and part of it is the mixing up of coverages. I asked Joel Embiid specifically about that at the end of the game, about the way he's defended pick and rolls, which was much better in game 1 much better in game 2 than game 1. And he said what he kind of did was he was kind of playing a cat and mouse game with them, where he would show high sometimes, but then he would drop back really quick, or the opposite. He would look like he was going drop, and then he would show high. So this is the way the playoffs go, right? I mean, it's just every game's going to be different. There's going to be adjustments made. So, the Sixers made a big one. It worked out really well. And I'm sure Atlanta is going to have some big adjustments in game 3 to counter those.
You almost wonder how the Sixers thought the plan they had in game 1 was a useful one, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I said before, and I really still do believe this, I think they could have weathered that Trae Young storm in game 1 if the bench had done anything in game 1, and if they don't have 9 turnovers in the first quarter. I think they would have had a chance in that game, a much better chance. And listen, they almost did. They almost came back anyway. But I do think they would have stuck in that game a little bit longer had it not been for the poor bench play and for the turnover. So yes, Trae Young was much better, and the coverage didn't work as well in game 1. But I do think game 1 would have gone much differently. Had some other things going right for them.
Obviously, Embiid was a monster, and you talk about making adjustments. The Sixers had to adjust to Trae Young. Do the Hawks have an adjustment for what Joel Embiid is doing right now?
I mean, they've been kind of letting Capella do his one-on-one thing. In the second half, you saw them double him a little bit more, and it really didn't matter. And that kind of goes back to the idea of, throughout Joel Embiid's career, the one coach or team that seemed to always gives him trouble is the Toronto Raptors because of their ability to double team and kind of do it out of nowhere and throw stuff at him. You see what the Hawks do when they double team him, and there's just nothing. It's not exotic. It's not surprising. It's been pretty obvious, and he's picking it apart. Either he's scoring off it because they're just giving him a little bit too much room, or he's finding teammates. You see Seth Curry had a big night last night. Tobias Harris was unbelievable early on in that game. And I don't know what the adjustment Atlanta can make is other than getting different players. They could try different things. I'm sure, they're gonna double him more consistently, and perhaps, throw some more exotic stuff at him. But I don't know that they have the personnel to make it work. And then on top of that, I still think, there was some weird criticism about Ben Simmons scoring 4 points, which is just beyond mind-blowing to me. But I think that what you might see is perhaps Atlanta's adjustment is that they just double Joel Embiid more and they force Ben Simmons to be more of a scorer and get to the rim, which I think he's capable of doing. It's just a matter of it wasn't required in game 2, so he didn't have to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of those classic, you don't care where the points come from. I mean, he scores 4 points. He shot the ball 3 times. People are up in arms. I get it. It's frustrating because you think he can do more or he can do more. The frustrating part is why doesn't he? But he's saying they didn't need me to.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a matter of what would you rather have? Would you rather have Joel Embiid, who was second in MVP voting, who averaged almost 30 points a game? Would you rather have him cook and score 40 points? Tobias Harris, who was your second leading scorer all season and had it going early. What do you want him to do? You want him to take those touches away from those guys? Or Seth Curry, who had 20 points. Do you want him to take touches away from those guys so that he can, it's just silly to me. I mean, listen, the one thing I get.
If Embiid scored 28 last night and Simmons had 12, people would be happier.
Right, which is bizarre. Bottom line is they scored whatever what was it? Right. So I mean, they scored more than that. They scored plenty of points. They scored plenty of points in game 1 too. So offense is not the issue in this series through the first 2 games at all. They're going to score, and I think they're going to be able to score in Atlanta through the rest of the series. They can score. It's a matter of can they slow down Trae Young, and that's the bigger takeaway for me. If you're looking at Ben Simmons' game, the bigger takeaway is the job he was able to do on Trae Young. The free throws, listen, I get that. That's a concern. That's troubling. They hacked him. He missed 2. Doc Rivers pulled them and then put him back in. So, I mean, that is the trouble that you can worry about. That's a fair criticism. But to worry about the fact that he only scored 4 points when Joel Embiid scored 40, Tobias Harris got 20, Seth Curry got 20, and they scored plenty, that just seems silly to me.
I don't know if anybody asked Ben or Doc. I don't recall, but did anybody tell Ben, look, your job is Trae Young. Don't worry about scoring tonight. Your energy, give me 100% on that end of the court, and don't worry about the other side.
No one was really. Ben actually didn't talk last night, but Doc didn't really get asked much about it because I mean I think it's for most of us it's pretty understood, right? I mean this is why he's in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. This is what he is here to do. It may not be what everyone envisioned when he was the number 1 overall pick. It may not be what everyone wants him to be or whatever. But the bottom line is this is who he is. He's a really good facilitator who pushes the ball in the open court. And he's an elite defender, elite, extremely versatile defender. So just, again, it just comes back to and something you and I have talked about all season, Mike. It's acceptance. Accept who he is, and you won't be disappointed.
Bingo.
Again, free throws. Yeah, you can't he's got to shoot 60% at least. You can't shoot 30% on free throws in the playoffs. That can't happen. No. But everything else about his game, you need to just accept that this is who he is, and that this team is built for Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris to be the primary scorers, Seth Curry and Danny Green to be the shooters. That's the way it's set up.
Absolutely. We're in agreement there. Paul Hudrick, at Paul Hudrick. All right, you wrote about Shake Milton. I got a lot of questions on Shake because this is interesting. Because now what? This was the 4th highest leading scorer on this team. So it wasn't like he came out of nowhere. They used him a lot this year, and he produced. He falls out of the rotation. He's shooting shots at 10 o'clock at night. Doc says we're going to use him. But that moment last night was not a Shake Milton moment, but Doc went to him. So credit him there. But what was it that allowed him to kind of break out of this rut, because he looked like a guy who had been stripped of his confidence. And when he made that first three, it was like, I swear to you, Paul, watching, you're at the game, so you can't see maybe as close in his face. He looked like the guy that played the Clippers on Saturday afternoon. Like, I know when this ball leaves my hand, it is going down.
Confidence is a hell of a thing. He saw one go in, and that was probably all he needed. Then he hits that 35-footer at the end of the buzzer, and that was it. And then that's when it's like, okay, maybe this guy, maybe this is the moment he kind of turns the corner. And
so now what? So now what for him? Is he over Maxey? Is he back in the rotation? We've been asking him to shorten the rotation, and now he says, no, don't shorten it. You got to put me in it.
Right. Well, it's not a matter of, see, to me, I thought what Doc did in the second half was he adjusted. And I think that's the one thing I've liked about Doc Rivers so far, even though I don't love that he has played 11 guys consistently. Yes, he might play 11 guys, but sometimes, like Shake Milton played 30 seconds in game one. He has a pretty good feel for, okay, this guy is going to help me tonight. I'm riding him. Okay, this guy doesn't have it tonight. I'm not going to him. So, like, really the only locks in this rotation, it seems like, are you're going to see Dwight Howard, George Hill, Matisse Thybulle, which I think we kind of all knew all along. The rest of the guys, it's just he's feeling it out. He's feeling which guy he can go to. Now, listen, in the first series, it made sense to go to Tyrese Maxey for a bunch of reasons. One, he was just playing really, really well. Two, the matchup. With all the speed the Wizards had and their lack of size, Maxey was a great matchup. You know what? This series, I don't know if Maxey's as good of a matchup because I don't think the speed matters as much. But the size is a concern. You saw, in the second quarter when the Atlanta bench went on the run of Gallinari and Herder kind of went nuts, Maxey really struggled to kind of keep up with the height and really challenge Gallinari and Herder. People don't realize this. Shake Milton is 6'6", and he has a 6'10" wingspan. He's not a great defender, but he is an improved defender. He's not a bad defender at all. So I think from that perspective, too, I think that helps the Sixers. And I just think they needed outside shooting and they needed some scoring. And I think so. I just think it's going to change from game to game. It's going to change from series to series. And I think
it's going to be maddening, right? It's going to be maddening because it's like
of course
you push the wrong button. You're like, why did he go to him? Why did he go back to Shake Milton? Or oh no, I told you got to play Maxey.
But it's the play. I mean, this is the playoffs, Mike. I mean, this is the way it goes for a lot of teams. I mean, and it's funny too because I saw this is like a little side note. I was watching TNT last night and like Charles Barkley and Shaq were kind of crushing Shake and being like, oh, this guy, like they needed those points just to win that game. And then they're gushing over Kevin Herder. Do me a favor and look up, compare Kevin Herder's season and Shake Milton's season. They're like the same player. Now, I like Kevin Herder more personally, but to think that there's this like crazy sizable gap that Kevin Herder should be putting up 20 and not missing anything, and Shake Milton shouldn't even be in the rotation. Like, no, that's not the case. Shake Milton's a pretty good player, man. I think he's a pretty good player that, as you already pointed out, I think he had a lapse of confidence. He was struggling. It snowballed. It got worse and worse. And I think I thought he was a guy that could help them going into the playoffs. He obviously struggled in round one. I think he can help them. I really do. Is he going to do what he did last night every night? No, but I think he is a guy that can occasionally give you that and be solid on defense.
Paul Hudrick covers the 76ers for 97.3 ESPN.com. He's got a lot more on the Shake Milton game over on 97.3 ESPN.com. So if Atlanta's now watching that last night, what is Nate McMillan doing the next 2 days?
I don't think he's over. I don't think he's going to overanalyze anything from, I think, like you said, he, off the top, I think he feels pretty good about, winning game one and game two coming back and making it close after the Sixers got off to such a hot start. For him, what he really you just have to he's got to keep hoping those bench guys keep bringing it. I mean, Gallinari and Herder have both been very good through 2 games. And that's kind of been the difference. Like, really, I mean, yes, Trae Young was great in game one, but to me, the big difference of why, when you see Atlanta making the runs, it's typically their bench is beating up on the Sixers bench. Like, it was 32-0 bench points at a halftime last night. That's insane. And then in the second half, it was 26-17 Sixers, so it evened out, obviously. But that's, if you're Atlanta, you just have to keep pumping your bench guys up and keep hoping that they can keep producing. And then with Trae, I think they're just going to keep trying to mix things up. Show the Sixers different things. Try to run them through different kinds of screens. Put them in different spots on the floor. And also too, I thought what the Sixers did really good offensively was they targeted Trae Young a little bit. They got him in some screens. They got him in some mismatches. And I think that made a difference too. And I'm sure Nate McMillan's looking at the tape and seeing how the Sixers did that, and he's going to try to avoid that. So, like I keep saying, it's going to be adjustment after adjustment after adjustment, and it's going to be like that throughout the series.
Early, yeah, they had him on Danny Green. Green would set the screen up top. Harris came rolling off on Young, and Young, didn't want any part of that.
Nope.
And you have Ben Simmons down in the dunker spot, so John Collins doesn't know what to do. So he's kind of half-assing it, and there's Harris. That's why he had 16, is because he got Trae Young stuck on him for the first quarter of that game. I thought that was a great job. And Doc said it last night. We just kept – I'm watching the game. I said, they just keep running the same damn play. Young is getting exploited. And we talked about how do you exploit Young? Well, they went after it. And then I thought the Sixers did a really good job of putting that defender, that second defender, making Young not get as much depth on the offensive side. So he couldn't, penetrate as much. They were sending that second defender out more, which caused him to go out more and got the ball out of his hand. So I thought it was fun watching the little chess going on last night. Both teams executed. The Sixers executed their side really well. Then Atlanta made their adjustments. They got back in. Shake kind of came in. But in the end, Joel Embiid was bonkers. Can he keep this up?
I am not betting against him. That's for damn sure. He has been unreal through 2 games on a torn meniscus. What he's doing, it's legendary. Like it flat out is. I mean, that's he set his playoff career high in game 1 and broke it in game 2. I mean, I see. Like I said, Mike, I'm not going to bet against this guy. He was the second in MVP voting for a reason. I think it's shameful that he only got 1 first place vote. And so I mean, it's a credit to what he has done all season long, and I think it's fair to wonder too, Mike, in seasons past, and I think we talked about this the other day. When he wasn't in as good of shape, when he didn't come into camp at his peak physical condition, could he play through this injury if this were last year or 2 years ago? Would he be able physically to be able to do that? And I think his maturation and his focus on taking care of his body, his fitness, I think that's helping him in a big way overcome this injury.
Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick. Are you there? No, you're not in there. It's in Atlanta. That's the second time I've done. No, it's in Atlanta Friday night. We'll have the game right here on. It's funny because I'm thinking in my head, maybe I'll go to the game Friday night, and I just realized I cannot go unless I jump on a plane. And that's
I was going to say you could.
You could, yes, and so could you. You want to go down to Atlanta? Go the ATL. That's by the way, interesting place to play down there. You don't think of Atlanta as this tough home court. You don't think of Atlanta as much as anything. They haven't had a lot of success in a long time, but how's it, going down there? The Sixers have seemingly got to get this first one, right? Game 3 is the one you're targeting.
I mean, a split would be great. If they sweep, that would be phenomenal. I mean, if they, quite frankly, I think if they sweep, then the series is over in 5 games. But I think splitting is what you want and then figure it out from there.
All right. We will catch up on Friday's show with Paul. And, of course, this one is all 1-1. You got 2 days off to now stew over this one, and we'll see what happens. And, by the way, I guess we shouldn't take for granted that Embiid's knee could act up over the next 2 days, right?
It's not impossible. I mean, who knows? It's without any of us knowing the severity of the tear, the size of the tear, the exact location of the tear, it's hard for any of us to know exactly what he's feeling. He's clearly feeling it because he's been talking about it. He said it's limited him a little bit. We haven't really seen it, but he says it is, so I'll take him at his word on that. So, yeah, they're of course, that's always a concern.
All right, man. I will catch up with you on Friday's show. Looking forward to that as we get ready for game number 3.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks, man.
Paul Hudrick, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. He is excellent, and you should read his stuff right now at 973ESPN.com. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, and I want to let you know that we are sponsored by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. I got plenty more to go, including football at 4 with Geoff Mosher. I want to get into some football. Pro Football Focus, which, was one of those sites that's very back and forth. People either like them or don't like them. It's funny, when When it fits your narrative, you use their stats. When it doesn't, you don't. I don't know what PFF doesn't know what they're talking about. PFF says it's the second best guard in the league. It's one of those type of deals. Where did they have the Eagles secondary and defensive line and linebackers ranked? Because we all look at that defense and wonder, you might be surprised. I got the answers coming up next. All right, 346 on the Sports Bash. I'm Mike Gill. What's going on, everybody? Hopefully this weather holds off. It's supposed to be like a heat, humidity, crazy something But hopefully it just kind of blows over. It's supposed to be like that all week long. I'm no weatherman, but they get stuff wrong, and so do I. But this is what I'm not getting wrong. The Philadelphia Eagles are a team that nobody really has high expectations for. And I'm not saying I have high expectations, but I feel like I'm the one person who feels like they have a shot to be pretty good. I don't say pretty good. I mean, I think they can win the division. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be pretty good. Like Washington won the division last year. I wouldn't say they were really good. But I think at the end, like when people say, the Eagles stunk, you were wrong. I don't think I'm going to be wrong about this. And I'll tell you why. I'm going through Pro Football Focus, and look, they're not the gospel, right? But at least they back up a lot of the things that I've been saying. And when I break this down for you, you're going to be like, huh. Now, the one area we know stinks is the Eagles secondary. But according to Pro Football Focus, it's not that they're good, okay? But they're not the worst. There are 7 teams ranked below Philadelphia in the secondary. How about that? They are the 25th ranked secondary entering, according to Pro Football Focus's numbers, whatever, analytics or stats. And look, they're not gospel, they're not Bible, but they mentioned Darius Slay, they mentioned Anthony Harris. I think Anthony Harris, again, ESPN did that article last week about how he was one of the best offseason pickups and that it was him replacing Mills that is one of the top replacements in the league. People don't realize Anthony Harris was a pretty good player. Not great, not an all-pro. I don't even know that he made a Pro Bowl. But he had 2 pretty good seasons with the Minnesota Vikings. And the reason he had good seasons, when he had good seasons, is because Minnesota had a really good front four. And when we talk about front fours, Pro Football Focus ranked the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line as a top 5 defensive line unit in all of football. That's right, top 5. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, Ryan Kerrigan, Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett. They've got some talent. And those guys up front, they have them ranked as the 5th best defensive unit in football. And those 5 guys up front could make a guy like Anthony Harris better, Roddy McLeod better, Darius Slay better. Now, you might say, well, those guys were here last year. That didn't help anybody out. Well, maybe these guys are better. Maybe Anthony Harris is better than Jalen Mills playing safety. Maybe Darius Slay was in the wrong system or just didn't. I have no idea. But I thought it was very interesting that they had the Eagles defensive line ranked 5th in football. And that's ahead of, teams that made the playoffs last year, like the Saints, like the 49ers, like the Cleveland Browns, like the Green Bay Packers, like the Buffalo Bills. When you look inside the NFC East, it's kind of interesting. Now, the Washington football team, they're ranked number 2. But after that, on defense, the defensive line, the New York Giants came in at 18, and the Dallas Cowboys were 27th in football. 27th. Now, I talked about the secondary. The 32 ranked secondary. So Dallas had the 27th ranked defensive line. One of the 7 teams that was below Philadelphia when it comes to the secondary? Yeah, you guessed it. The Dallas Cowboys. They are 31st in football entering this season. Only one team worse than Dallas in the secondary, and that's Atlanta. So they have the 27th defensive line. They have the 31st secondary. Now you go to the linebacker unit, and you'd say, well, the Eagles linebackers aren't any good. Dallas is number 6, by the way, when it comes to linebackers. So they're pretty good there. But we all thought, man, the Eagles linebackers have got to be the worst. Well, not quite. They're not good, but they're not the worst. They're actually 4th from the bottom. They're 29th. But they were historically bad last year. And they talk about the addition of Eric Wilson, that he would be the best graded member of the Eagles unit from last year. So they did bring an upgrade in, but we don't know this answer. What kind of defense are they going to play? We'll talk to Geoff Mosher about that coming up in just a little bit, because the assistant coaches spoke today. The position coaches spoke today. You heard from Jeff Stoutland, who had some very interesting things to say about the Andre Dillard, Jordan Mailata battle. He also had some interesting things to say about Jack Driscoll, Nate Herbig, and the depth on this offensive line. But we'll also hear from defensive line coach Tracy Rocker. Will he give us some insight on how Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Ryan Kerrigan, Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett, and company, what kind of scheme will they be in? What kind of roles will those guys have? Denard Wilson talked a little bit about the secondary on this team. And we'll also hear what Aaron Moorhead had to say about Jalen Reagor and Travis Fulgham. I thought there was a lot of interesting things that Aaron Moorhead said about Travis Fulgham this week. Does he believe in Travis Fulgham, the guy who had those 4 big games, or the guy who really got shut down? You'll hear that. By the way, some breaking news in the NBA in this Sixers and Hawks series. This just came out 5 minutes ago, and it's a pretty interesting story, is that DeAndre Hunter is done for the season. He will undergo meniscus surgery. How about that? He has a torn meniscus, and he is done for the year. How about the irony of this one? DeAndre Hunter, by the way, is a big player for them. You might say, who's DeAndre Hunter? Well, not a big deal. No, Hunter is a huge loss for them. Huge loss for them. You look at what Hunter did. Forget, in the regular season, you might say, who cares? It's the regular season, right? And in the regular season, forget the regular season. In the playoffs, I should say, he was their 4th leading scorer in the first round against the Knicks. And part of the thing against the Knicks, he shoots 38% from 3-point range. But in the regular season, when you take a look at, all right, this Hawks team, you're getting ready for them, DeAndre Hunter averaged 15 points a game. So big loss for them. Size, 3, good defender. And the irony of the fact that he's out because he's got a torn meniscus. He's getting surgery to the lateral meniscus. Now, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. The lateral meniscus, is that different from what Embiid has? Does he have a lateral? Because one's on the outside, one's on the inside. So, because people are saying, how is Embiid playing and this guy's not?
It's the lateral is not just a stabilizer, but it's also what allows you to move from side to side. The idea is that Embiid's is completely on the outside, and that only limits, how much pressure, how many hits he could take on the knee.
Big blow to the Hawks, though.
Huge blow.
Big blow to the Hawks. They lose DeAndre Hunter. So, torn meniscus, done for the year. Big help for the Sixers. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, when we come back, I just told you the PFF rankings for that Eagles defense, but the assistant coaches spoke today. We're going to dive into it all with Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. I got all your Sixers comments building up that I'm going to read coming up at 4:40 today, so stick around. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. It is Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you this hour by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. Geoff Mosher's here. The assistant coaches all spoke today. I talked a little Eagles before you came on, Geoff. There's some interesting Eagles stuff in my head. You have stuff out there, so let's get into a little Football at 4 here as everybody's got the mandatories. A lot of teams have the mandatories. The Eagles do not, but they are having their coaches available. And I thought Jeff Stoutland, a guy who doesn't talk all that much, had some interesting things to say today. So let's dive into that, because last week we talked a little bit about the Dillard-Mailata matchup at left tackle, and Jeff Stoutland gave a little insight on what that might look like today.
He certainly did, and it's always good to catch up with Jeff Stoutland because when you're in our line of work, Mike, the one thing you really do like is a talker, someone who's animated, and there's no more perfect match than coach to personality, like offensive line and a real gregarious coach than Jeff Stoutland to the Eagles offensive line coach, because he's got a lot of personality and he's a big talker, and yeah, he shed a decent amount of light on the Andre Dillard, Jordan Mailata competition. And just the fact that himself, Mike, he acknowledged what we already knew, but you want to hear it from officially. It's a competition. So I know that there's a school of thought that Andre Dillard's a first-round pick and that he would be the lead horse as long as he was healthy. And I think it goes to show that that's not the case, that the way Stoutland described it, it's 50-50. He has been very impressed with how Andre Dillard has got himself prepared this past year to battle for the job, but it is going to be a battle for the job. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and, it's one thing to kind of say that. We'll see, I guess, when they get out in the field, but the anticipation it would be. But if I were, like Adam had said on Friday, he thinks the betting favorite, if they're, we're in the sports betting world, would be Mailata, and he seems to be, in his mind, a pretty heavy favorite, it sounds like, anyway. Do you think that they want Mailata to win the job?
I know people think this, and maybe it's true, but I really have a hard time in this situation thinking that they root for a specific person over just the best person. I think it benefits them differently and uniquely no matter who wins the left tackle job. If Jordan Mailata wins, they get a chance to, because he's already 3 years in, give him an extension right now that could be very team friendly, because he's a year away from free agency. He's had an injury history, and you can probably get him at a left tackle number for a long term that's going to be quite low compared to some of the best left tackles in the league. I mean, it's still going to be good money for a left tackle, but you don't have to pay him, otherworldly type of number right now. If Andre Dillard wins, you have the advantage of saying, well, this is our first round pick, and he clearly had some obstacles he had to overcome, and he did overcome them. And now he can tap into the potential that we saw when we drafted him in the first round, trading up 2 years ago. And there's also financial incentive there in that this will be his third year, so you get to wait. You don't have to even extend the contract right now. You can't. You have to have him go one more year, see how he plays, and then go with there. And then, of course, whoever doesn't win could become a big part of their depth or perhaps trade bait. So I don't believe in my heart of hearts that there's a rooting interest other than whoever is the best guy at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that the rest of the stuff that Stoutland talked about too. I mean, it's almost as if he almost wants to have Jack Driscoll be a part of a battle for a starting job. He was talking glowingly about where he kind of fits in on this team.
Yeah, Mike, I remember telling you guys this in spring of last year, how much Jeff Stoutland likes Jack Driscoll. And that became that became true and pretty evident pretty early, as when Lane Johnson got hurt, or he was still hurting with the ankle, and they needed a starter at right tackle for the season opener. It was the rookie Jack Driscoll. So, and I think it was Nate Herbig that started right guard. So Matt Pryor was pushed out by Jack Driscoll. Not that it was, that hard, but that's tough for a rookie who didn't even have the normal OTAs that rookies tend to have. So that was a big feather in the cap for Jack Driscoll. I think he played well enough when he was in there to really see the potential. And again, Jeff Stoutland, I think 2 separate occasions during today's Zoom, talked about, he actually said he liked him coming out of college, but even he underestimated how good, how sudden, and how quick he is, explosive off the ball until seeing it up front live every day. So he really likes him. And Mike, what that says to me is here's a guy who can play offensive tackle, but might also be able to play other positions. But if you've got, so-and-so, Mailata or Dillard winning the left tackle job, and they love Jack Driscoll as the top backup offensive tackle, what does that mean for the loser of the Mailata Dillard competition?
Do you keep two tackles, or does one guy play this, is the swing guy and plays them both? Or I guess you would keep two in the event that two guys went down. But,
right.
If Lane Johnson got hurt, I guess you would go to Jack Driscoll. If the loser on the one side get hurt, you would go to the other guy, right? But that, so I guess there is room for both guys, but he seemed to really like him, which, obviously last year people say, well, these guys, the line last year was a mess. The problem is when you have to play them all together, and you have to play them together with a new guy next to you. If Nate Herbig and Jack Driscoll played 8 weeks together, by the 9th week, they'd probably have been a decent crew, right?
Yeah, the continuity was the biggest problem. 14 different offensive lines that they had to play, because individually there were some good things to like about some of these guys, but also not just the continuity. They're young. So even Jordan Mailata, who looked really good last year, Mike, for what he was, he gave up more sacks than your ordinary offensive tackle. But we could excuse that because we realize he's playing football for the first time in his life, and the positives are outweighing the negatives. So yeah, the product wasn't good, but the development there was good. Nate Herbig did turn out to be, by the end of the year, a guy who I felt did a good job of, if you can't win your battle as far as pushing somebody far back, you can at least stalemate. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing a tweet here. The Eagles signing some kind of former Jags wide receiver, Michael Walker, I guess. Yeah, according to Schefter. So anyway, Nate Herbig is a guy who I thought was a good run blocker, right? And not a great pass protector, should be a backup, but still somebody who can give you some quality snaps like a Wisniewski did when they won the Super Bowl. He can get in there and hold his own. And of course, Jack Driscoll looked decent at times. And of course, Jordan Mailata looked like he could play. And so now you're looking at the team with Andre Dillard coming back, and Stoutland mentioned this today too. This team has depth. I mean, 2 years ago, the top guy coming in was either Halapoulides Vaitai, and when he was gone, it was Matt Pryor in the playoff game against Seattle, right? I mean, he had to start that game, and now Matt Pryor might not make this team. He probably shouldn't if the talent that they've drafted is good enough, and add in Landon Dickerson.
Remember, Geoff, last year when Dillard got hurt, they went to Pryor first to play left tackle.
Yeah, and that was a disaster. Someone told me, I forget who it was, that Josh Sweat turned into J.J. Watt in those 2 days of camp, and basically made the All-Pro team going up against Matt Pryor at left tackle.
Okay, so Brandon Brooks is back. Brandon Brooks, his comment's my favorite of the offseason. I tore my Achilles once, and when I came back, I was the best, period. So what does Stoutland see from his veteran right guard?
Well, he said he was – it's funny. He echoed a sentiment that I had. I think I said it on Inside the Birds, maybe with you last time, is that I have no idea what to expect from Brandon Brooks. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he just came back and was a dominant player. It wouldn't surprise me if he came back and showed decline because of what he's been through. And Jeff Stoutland said the same thing. He said, I'll be honest with you, I did not know what to expect from Brandon Brooks, but he was very, very impressed with what he did see in obviously limited doses here in a non-contact, non-7-on-7 or 11-on-11 type of environment. But at least to see him out on the field and, asserting his presence again and in great athletic shape, he's got pretty good expectations for Brandon Brooks to resume his role as one of the best right guards in the league.
Lane Johnson, also another guy who's back here, and I know Stoutland, talked about the offense, but Lane Johnson's interesting because he likes Driscoll. They've got Mailata and Johnson here, so you mentioned the depth. All of a sudden, they got a bunch of guys that they like, but we keep kind of harping on if their best guys are out there, they're pretty good.
If their best guys are out there, they are assuming that they have not lost much between the Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks contingent on the right side. I would agree with you. They have a chance to be, one of the best, if not the best offensive line in the league again. But again, that's assuming everything works out well and everything goes good. And it's hard to do that when you know that 3/5 of these guys were on the Super Bowl team, and that's like 5 years ago now. So
Yeah,
they're all aging, is what I'm saying.
Here's another thing before we hear some of the stuff that some of the other guys said, which is if Lane Johnson gets hurt and Driscoll has to play, they're okay there. If Brandon Brooks gets hurt and Herbig has to play, they're okay with that. It's, again, if they have to play multiple of those guys at the same time. So they now have some good depth behind each guy if one guy goes down.
Yeah, but yes, they're okay in that they can hold their own. It's obviously not an apples to apples, right, replication there. If Lane Johnson goes down and you have to play Jack Driscoll, you're going to suffer a little bit. Yeah.
You mentioned with Vitae, he's not better than Peters, but if he's the only replacement on the line, you can kind of scheme to help him out.
Right. Exactly. You can hold your own, but it's hard to hold your own when 3 or 4 guys at any position just go down and drop like flies.
Like at the end of the year, if you say Mailata, Sayamala, Kelsey, Brooks, and Driscoll played 15 out of 16 games because Lane Johnson got hurt in game 1. Okay, that's fine. We can do that. We can get through with Driscoll playing 15 games at right tackle next to Brandon Brooks. That's fine. It's if one game Brooks gets hurt and Herbig plays right guard, then the next game Matt Pryor plays right guard, and then somebody else, that's where it gets to be a problem. All right, Mosher's here from the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. We were talking about Pro Football Focus ranked the Eagles' defensive line top 5 in the league. Number 5 best defensive line in football. So if you have a good offensive line and you have a good defensive line, you must be pretty good. We know they have good talent on the front, but Tracy Rocker spoke today, and we all kind of are wondering, well, they were good defensive line because Jim Schwartz kind of counted on those guys, and he wide 9, and they got to the quarterback. Is that going to be similar? How do we expect to see Tracy Rocker's unit under Jonathan Gannon's system?
I would love to know Tracy Rocker's honest opinion of how he felt the Eagles defense was run over the last 2 years, because there's many years, I should say, under Jim Schwartz, because there's one thing that he said that I don't think was a veiled shot at Jim, but I just think it kind of let you into his philosophy and how that's different than Jim. And his philosophy is, yes, he was asked if they're going to be an attacking defensive front. And he said, yes, of course we're going to be attacking defensive front. But he said, but let's not forget about situational football. We're not going to attack in every single situation. He says, what if we're backed up on our own 10, right? And they're really coming at us. And, I think that's what he said. Something of that. And we really need to stop the run there. Do you think that, we're going to be going for the quarterback when the other team comes out and they're trying to run the ball down our throats? So I think what he was saying is, like, you can't always be in attack the quarterback mode. You have to adjust to the situation at hand. And again, I don't think he was calling out Jim Schwartz by any stretch of the means, but that's kind of what we were used to, right, for the last few years, of just the quote unquote play the run on the way to the quarterback. Everything's about getting to the quarterback first and foremost. And he talked about, Tracy Rocker, situational football, a little bit of read and react, which is certainly a different philosophy than what Jim Schwartz would preach, which was just get upfield. So really interested in seeing how the difference in the dynamic here on the defensive line.
Yeah, and obviously everybody's, Pro Football Focus also ranked the defensive backs, the secondary, I should say. The Eagles weren't the worst. There were 7 teams worse than them, believe it or not. 7 worse.
I do believe that. I can believe it. Because the Eagles have Slay, at least. I mean, they're like the Panthers. Who do the Panthers have at corner right now? They have like nobody. Oh, they drafted J.C. Horn, right? But I mean, there are a couple of teams out there like the Cardinals, or it's almost like you can't name their
7 secondaries below the Eagles. Let's see, were Seattle, Jacksonville, the Jets, the Raiders, the Lions, Dallas, and the Falcons.
Can't argue. I'm sure they're all pretty bad.
Carolina, by the way, was 2 steps in front of you. They were 23. Philadelphia's 25. They said Slay. They mentioned Anthony Harris is a very good upgrade over Mills. And they talked about they got an upgrade on Avonte Maddox. So what did Denard Wilson say today about what they envision Maddox's role being?
Yeah, I had the leadoff question on the Zoom for Denard Wilson. So I asked him about Avonte Maddox, and specifically I said, have you looked back at his tape that goes all the way back to his rookie year when he played safety? And I asked if he kind of has a feel for where Avonte Maddox fits best right now in this defense. I did not get an answer, by the way. I didn't expect one. I mean, I didn't get an exact, yes, we think he's a slot corner or we're going to play him at safety. But he did say he's been working on technique and fundamentals with Avonte. And he did say Avonte has been taking notes to know every position. And I do think you'll see the Eagles kind of follow along this trend lately of and they already did it a little bit last year with Jalen Mills, but kind of trying to make guys into hybrids or not just typecast them into one specific position on the field, but try to make use of them by moving them around.
All right, but we're running short, so I want to get a couple things here on the offensive side of the ball. Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. I don't know if that makes me feel any better about Avonte Maddox, by the way, and how they're going to use him. I would like to see maybe him be a reserve player and not a starting player. That might be his best role. What about Travis Fulgham and what Aaron Moorhead said? Is he, in Aaron Moorhead's mind, is he salvageable? Is he somebody? Is he a part of this offense?
Definitely. Aaron Moorhead said that what you saw in those 4-week span last year where he was among the NFL leaders in catches and receiving yards was not a fluke. He said you don't do those kind of things if you don't have that kind of talent. So for him, he said, Travis had to get used to the idea of people scheming against him. The other offensive coordinator now saying defensive coordinator saying this is a guy that we have to shut down, and the physical play and being a guy who has all that success and maintaining it. A lot of it, what he seemed to suggest, Mike, was like the mentality. We've talked a lot about that on Inside the Birds, about this group of young wide receivers really have to grow up quickly. They have to mature. They have to understand that every second of their day at the NovaCare complex, they have to treat like it's their last second because they're young and they don't have a veteran leader, and they've got to grow up fast and be productive. And that's where he was with Fulgham. Where I disagreed with what he said is he said that he didn't feel that Alshon Jeffrey's return had anything to do with Fulgham's regression. He called it just an impeccable timing, and I don't know that I agree that that's just an impeccable timing.
I would probably agree with that, right? I mean,
yeah.
On top of that, you had Fulgham last year. You also had Rieger, and I'm interested, did Moorhead give any indication that they didn't use him the best last year?
He mostly gave an indication that he felt like that he could and should be used more, but also that he feels that Rieger is a tough kid, more so than maybe the public thinks. He mentioned the whole social media and sometimes funneling all that out. And he said that Jalen, it's not that Jalen was impacted negatively by what people were saying about him and Justin Jefferson comparisons, but he knew that it was out there. And, anytime you know it and it's there and it's prevalent, it kind of hangs over you. So he didn't feel like it affected his play more so than maybe the being a rookie and the injuries that he had to deal with, but he was aware of what was out there.
Some moves by the Eagles seconds ago, I should say. Quarterback Jamie Newman has been waived, as is Khalil Tate. And we were all waiting for Trayvon Grimes to be like the training camp, darling. Well, he has also been waived.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been on this show with you a couple of times, and I've tried to tell how the fans kind of cling to certain guys and say not to get so excited about certain players, Trayvon being one and Jamie Newman being the other. I mean, there were people, by the way, professionals who had takes that Jamie Newman was going to beat out Joe Flacco for the backup job. So I can only do so much, Mike.
Well,
so can you.
I will say this. Jamie Newman, people thought, at least could hang around. They only still have 2 quarterbacks on the roster. You would think they need a camp arm.
Well, I imagine that they'll probably bring in a camp arm.
And
1 or 2.
In college, and he's gone now.
Well, maybe Greg Ward will have to take a few
steps. Ward, we need to throw the ball a little bit. Real quick, I asked Andrew this yesterday. Do you think Ward's role will be diminished?
I think it has the potential to be diminished only because there's younger, more explosive, weapons at his position. But those guys have to prove it. So, is the potential for him to take a playing time hit there? Yeah, but remember, he wasn't supposed to have this much playing time in the first place. He was a guy who benefited from being reliable and dependable and stepping up at a time where there were so many injuries, whether it was Alshon, whether it was Deshaun, whether it was go back to 2019, a couple of guys, even J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was hurt 2 years ago. So he benefited from that and stuck. But as I say all the time, he's the type of player that is a great guy to have, but you're always looking to upgrade over.
All right, you're dependable as well, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. New one drops on Thursday, 6:00 in the morning. When you wake up, check out the Inside the Birds podcast, and Adam Kaplan will be here tomorrow for that at 4:00 for football at 4. And
I like that you're repping Vanderbilt, by the way. That's a nice shirt.
Yeah, that's the second reference of my Vanderbilt shirt today. Well,
I know
Jason
you missed an opportunity with Fitz. You started talking about your South Jersey kid, Tracy Rocker. Did you bring up Tracy Rocker?
No, Fitz said about my van. He noticed it.
Yeah, but you could have said, we got a coach here, Tracy Rocker, whose kid is Kumar Rocker, the best or second best pitcher on Vanderbilt.
You know what? It's funny. He did bring up the Vanderbilt. I said, well, I coached a kid who's committed to Vanderbilt to play baseball. Right. And I have visited the Vanderbilt. People always say, I have these wacky college shirts, right? I have all the wacky. They're like, I have these random college shirts, right? People are like, why do you have a Vanderbilt shirt? Why do you have Syracuse? Why do you have Yale? I said, these are all campuses that I have visited. So I have shirts from all the different campuses that
I'm the same type. I like to get mementos.
Definitely. Yeah, I'd like to, so I was at Vanderbilt, and that's where I have my Vanderbilt shirt on today.
It was interesting to hear Tracy Rocker Zoom today because he was asked about Kumar.
I didn't realize that was his son.
Yeah, that's his son. And he almost was reluctant to he's a proud dad, of course, but he almost kept slipping in. I wish he would have been a football player. I'm like, this guy's probably going to be a top 3 draft pick in MLB and make a ton of money, and he'll be fine.
A top draft pick in the NFL. That's a good tease for my next segment. Do you remember on this day 5 years ago, the Phillies had the first pick in the draft?
Was it Mickey? Was it the Mick?
There you go. That was just a little tease. So we got this day on this day. Do you remember coming up next? He's Geoff Mosher. They have the Inside the Birds podcast tomorrow morning. And Geoff, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, man. I guess we got some catching up to. I got a picture on my phone of a little site check today.
Oh, nice. I look forward to have that conversation.
All right, man. See you.
Take care.
All right. He does an excellent job on the Inside the Birds podcast. Him and Adam Kaplan and Andrew DeCecco here for football at 4. On the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. But when we come back, I just got to tease it for you. Do you remember? These are all events that happened on this day. We'll do that coming up next here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. You're home for Sixers Hawks round 2 and the NBA playoffs. All right, do you remember? These are things that happened on this date. We will check them out. Josh Henning is my producer. So we will take a look at some of the events that occurred on this day. Sports Bash this hour brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. This is Do You Remember? These are events that all happened today. So here we go. You ready?
I am ready.
Woo-hoo! Shotgun. I just said one. 5 years ago today, the Phillies at the first overall pick in the draft, they chose high school outfielder Mickey Moniak. 5 years later, do we have any thought on him? He stinks.
I think they should have been the first overall pick.
Just think, you're the worst team, you get the first pick, and that's what happens to you. I mean, it's unfortunate.
Baseball is a weird sport.
Yeah, it's hard to criticize, but
baseball and hockey are those two sports where you're just like, the guy gets drafted, you're not even really sure what they are.
Well, the fact that you're taking high school kids, that's a hard thing because
they do the same thing in hockey too. These kids come right out of they're 18 years old, and you're like, we might see that guy in 3 years. All right.
Well, hockey, it seems that they're playing right away. Like you're getting
college players are.
Like Jack Eichel, some of the juniors players.
Well, they're already in the junior professional league. Right.
Yeah,
I mean, there are guys in hockey who are also being drafted. They're like 18 years old, and they're like baseball. They're like 3 years, 4 years away from getting there.
Yeah, I mean, like Ann Anderson was drafted third that year. He was a high school pitcher. I'd rather have him than Mickey Moniak.
Right, and the thing is, like, well, why did you draft Moniak instead of Anderson? There's that conversation.
You know, signability, that's a problem in baseball.
There's that too.
You know, you got the, I don't know if we can sign him because he's a pitcher or, you know, he's a college. All that kind of stuff comes into play. Probably, you know, you look back at that draft and say, okay, Pete Alonso was in that draft. He was drafted in the second round. You can't. Bo Bichette was drafted 66th. You can't do what you do in baseball for like football and basketball.
No.
Like that guy. You know, you're just like, oh, looking through the thing. Like, oh, here's a guy. Shane Bieber was drafted in the fourth round.
Right, and there's usually a reason why that guy was drafted.
Yeah, it's just so hit or miss.
Yeah. Like Piazza was barely drafted.
That's a rarity. Secretariat wins the Belmont by 31 lengths on this day. In 1973, becomes the first horse in 25 years to win the Triple Crown. It's widely regarded as one of the greatest races in history.
And there's a movie about that has a great cast, too.
Yeah. It's called Secretariat.
Yeah. It's got a really good cast. When we were in lockdown in the pandemic, they had random movies on TV. I decided to sit down and watch it. I was like, holy cow, all these different people are in this movie.
1985, the Lakers beat the Celtics in Game 6 to win the NBA Finals for the first time ever against Boston. LA had lost the first 8 final series against the Celtics. You know, all those Bill Russell teams that just kept beating the Jerry West teams. And they finally, in 1985, they got it done. Magic.
It's not that Jerry West was a loser. It was that he kept going against the behemoth every NBA final.
Yeah, that was like crazy to say that they met that many times and never beat them one. Like you weren't like 2-6 or 1-7. Over.
Listen, man, those Celtic teams were monster powerhouses.
1987, the Lakers are trailing the Celtics in the final seconds of Game 4. Magic Johnson dropped a junior skyhook. Gives LA the win. You know, they had some people forget, like we're talking about the NBA as a dynasty league. You had Lakers Celtics. Like those were epic battles.
There was a stretch there where literally there were only 3 teams making the NBA Finals for like an 8-year period. All it was the Lakers, Celtics, the Sixers were in every NBA Finals for an 8-year period.
The Sixers only got one of them.
They still got there a couple times.
Only one of them, I said.
They won one. They got there more than once.
1999, Bobby Valentine wears a fake mustache in the dugout after he was ejected against the Blue Jays. The Mets come back to win that game in 14 innings. That's an epic. I've had Bobby Valentine on the show a bunch of times.
Yeah, he's a great dude.
The fake mustache day. I mean, that is a great story. Like, hey, you remember that time where the manager was sitting in the dugout with a fake mustache? Come on.
It was great. That's when baseball was fun.
Yeah. All right.
Now you're miserable with the Phillies.
This whole baseball story is getting out of control. It's crazy. The pitching, the spider tack, and craziness.
Oh my goodness! And then you got to check the hats and check the.
They're saying they're going to check them 8 to 10 times a game. 2001, the Avalanche beat the Devils in Game 7 to win the Stanley Cup. It's the final game of Ray Bourque's Hall of Fame career, who won the Cup for the first and only time in his 22 years. I feel like hockey, 22 years played hockey. That's like one sport you could play 22 years, because you just mentioned it, like the high schoolers.
Yeah, and the funny thing with Bourque is that, Boston, that's when the Bruins were actually like a really pathetic franchise. They went through a period where they were just the most mediocre of mediocre. And it was like, let's go do this guy a favor. Let's go send him to a winning team.
Now, after they kind of turned it back around, but you're right. They finally let him kind of go, and he goes to Colorado and wins.
Yeah, it was a cool moment.
2009, the Angels select future MVP Mike Trout, 25th overall on this day in 2009.
Yeah, that's right. 2014 is passed on the best player in baseball.
2009, so he's been in the league that long. My gosh, it's crazy that he has been in the league that long.
And you could argue this is the best year of his career so far.
Well, he's hurt now.
Right now.
But he's having a great year, yes.
He was just raking.
2010, Patrick Kane scores an improbable goal in Game 6 of the 2010 Stanley Cup Finals against the Flyers. It gives Chicago the first Cup title in 49 years. The goal was recently named the goal of the decade.
And, of course, the Flyers were there.
Well, you remember Michael Layton was the goalie. He didn't even really realize it went in.
Yeah, he was confused where the puck was. He was looking around like, where'd it go?
It was like, wait, huh? What? It was like one of the most,
It was deflating. It was the
anticlimactic finishes, though.
It was a moment where you're just like, that's how we're ending this.
This day, 1978, the NBA draft was in New York City. The Celtics take Larry Bird with the 6th pick, even though he had a year left at Indiana State.
Yep.
Think about that. He still had a year left, but we took him anyway. Now, they got 4 years left.
Everyone comes out as soon as they can.
And in the same day in 1978, Larry Holmes won the heavyweight title with a 15-round split decision over Ken Norton. The fight came down to the 15th round, which many people believe was one of the best in boxing history.
It's a little ironic that those were the two to be mentioned there because of the fact that nobody talks about Holmes and Norton very much in the all-time heavyweight greats.
Yeah, Larry Holmes is one of the more underrated heavyweight champions ever.
And Norton broke Muhammad Ali's jaw in a knockout. Just crushed his face. That's how powerful he was. And now his son's coaching in the NFL.
Montreal beats the Kings 4-1 at the Forum in 93. They win the Cup in 5 games. It's the last time a team from Canada has won the Cup.
Patrick Waugh was their goaltender.
I did that whole thing yesterday about the Canadians who have led the series the entire time. They have not trailed at all in that series. And they have won 2 series within 8 days. And Toronto hasn't won a series in 17 years.
Yeah, and there's a huge rivalry in Canada between Canadians and Maple Leaf fans. And all Canadian fans can point to
That's cool, though.
Listen, we've been winning. You haven't.
By the way, the Trout draft in 2009, do you know who the first pick was? Kind of hard to remember that kind of stuff. But
I feel like it was the Nationals had number 1 overall pick that year. So was that the Harper draft?
Harper was the year before, I believe.
So this was Strasburg?
Yes.
Okay.
Strasburg was the number 1 pick in that draft.
I feel like the Nats had so many number 1 overall picks.
Well, they had Harper and then Strasburg.
Yeah.
And they got
they got somebody else high too.
Yeah, they got who was their third baseman?
Oh, Rendon.
They picked him 3rd.
There you go. It worked out pretty well.
It did. That's what happened on this day, June the 9th. Zach Plesac was drafted 12th round on that Mickey Moniak. You could have taken any guy and thrown a dart against the wall at their name and came out with a better option than Mickey Moniak.
Yeah.
God, he stunk.
Good old Matt Klentak.
Nick Senzel was the 2nd pick. He's the 3rd baseman for the Reds. Nice player. Ann Anderson, certainly, as we mentioned. The other guy that year that people thought the Phillies might be interested in was A.J. Puck.
Yes.
He was the pitcher, the lefty. He's with Oakland now.
Yeah. He's better.
A lot of these guys are better. Kyle Lewis, the outfielder from the Mariners. Jason Groom, he was the local kid.
I love Kyle Lewis. That kid is so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
If Kyle Lewis was a Philly fans would love him. But because he plays in Seattle, nobody knows who the heck he is.
Well, Lau from Tampa Bay, he was in that draft.
Good player.
He's turned into a really good player. Yeah, they really messed that up.
They blew that.
Damn it! You
Come on,
blew it!
Clintack.
Next hour, Jeff Kerr will talk some NFL with us at 5:25. Sports Bash rolls on here on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And, of course, you can watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Go to 973ESPN.com. We will rattle off. I told you, 4:40, I will get into your stream messages. That's next. Hey, Sports Bash Live on a Wednesday. Jeff Kerr will talk a little NFL with us in the next hour. I got plenty more on this Sixers win. DeAndre Hunter's out for the rest of the series and the season, by the way, if the Atlanta Hawks do advance. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. If you have a thought on the win last night and the series moving forward, send it to our text board, 609-403-0973. The phone lines are open, 609-573-3776. And, of course, if you're watching the show live, you can post your comments in the stream section, and we will post those up on here. Let me, post up some of the stuff that is going on in the video stream. Rodney says, no shout out to Kendrick Perkins, who was taking the Hawks in 6 after saying the Sixers will be in the finals all year. Yeah, I've heard Big Perk kind of stick with that. Barkley last night, he said, oh, look, they have better perimeter players. They do have better perimeter players, by the way. I mean, not necessarily. I mean, just Curry's very good. He's just so in the shadow of his brother. That's one. He's a better shooter than anybody they have. Huter's very good. Hunter being out, I mean, I don't know. I feel like because they're so perimeter oriented, I don't know that they have that lights out, bang down. Curry's the best shooter of the group. He's 45%. So Barkley said that Embiid's irrelevant in the series. That's preposterous, Barkley. Come on, dude. You're better than that. Jalen's watching on YouTube, says much needed win yesterday and with gusto. Important to rattle the Hawks as well. See, I don't know if they rattled the Hawks last night. I feel like the Hawks left there and said, hey, we won game 1. We hung in there in game 2. So I don't know if I agree with that they rattled them. Rodney says Simmons with only 4 points and his stat line doesn't concern me. Him blocking a Trae Young 3-point shot was worth more than just about anything Simmons could have done on offense last night. Yeah, I don't care about the Simmons scoring. It's frustrating as hell. I'm not going to lie about that. I mean, it's frustrating. I mean, Ben Simmons can score more than 4, but I also acknowledge that the Sixers don't ask him to score. Dom Corleone is watching on YouTube. He says, not worried with Simmons in this series. Make the Hawks choose. Clog the lane, and he will find the open man, defend the perimeter, and that's when he needs to dominate the middle. I've been saying that all season long, is that if you want to sag on Simmons, fine. That means someone's sagging off a shooter. And if you want to let Curry shoot, the Sixers will say, no problem. Green's got to start hitting. That could be an issue. But Green usually goes out into that corner. So that guy isn't the sag man. The sag guy is the guy that's on Curry, typically. That's why Curry gets these open looks all the time. I don't care how many points a game Simmons scores. If you score 118 with this defense, you're going to win. Most of the time. If they play defense like they did last night and they scored 118 points, I don't care how many points Simmons scores, to be honest with you. Doesn't matter to me. I don't care where the points come from. I'm not in that camp. Dom goes on to say the Sixers should feel good. I would be more concerned if I was the Hawks. They gave the Sixers their best shot and only won by 2. They won by 4. The Sixers bench put 2 up, 0 in the first half, and they lost by 16. I don't know. I think I disagree with that, Dom. I think the Hawks feel like they didn't have their best last night and still hung in that game. They got back in that game. I think they put a lot of energy to come back, and then the Sixers kind of pulled away again. I don't know. I feel like the Hawks feel like, hey, we got our game. Right? Maybe I'm wrong. Adam Gaskell's watching on Facebook. He says the pressure is on the Sixers unless they win Friday. Sixers have to win a game in Atlanta. No question about that. They can't come back home down 3-1. That would be a disaster. And even though they could probably make the game, make it go back to Atlanta, that would be tough, man. That would be tough. Atlanta's decent at home, too, by the way. Atlanta at home is, we don't think of Atlanta. They're only 10 games over 500 this year. They were 41-31, but they're a good home team, 25-11 at home this year. It's one of the better home teams in basketball. They were not a very good road team this year, and they stole a game on the road. So they are a good home team, 25-11. Their problem is they're not a great defensive team. What else we got here? Adam says, I just read that one. Pressure is still on the Sixers unless they win Friday. What else do we got here? We got one from Kyle. He says, if we get out of the East, we will win the championship. I mean, I don't think that's outrageous. Yeah, I don't think they're the Nets are the favorite right now. They've got to be. They're playing. They're shutting everybody up. Oh, continuity, got to play. They're shutting everybody up. So the Nets are the favorite. Out West, I don't know. I've liked what I've seen from Phoenix. Utah looked good last night, by the way. Mitchell was phenomenal. Is Mitchell the best player on the team that wins a championship? We'll see. It would be interesting to have Ben Simmons against Donovan Mitchell, though, in the playoff in the championship, don't you think? That whole Rookie of the Year thing. He'd wear his T-shirts. That would be an interesting storyline. Geoff is watching. Embiid gave y'all 40-13 with a torn meniscus and didn't get the MVP. That was straight up robbery. Yeah, I commented on that earlier, Geoff. The MVP in the NBA has become a joke. That award has become a cartoon sideshow. Seriously. First off, two things. One, I said this earlier. The fact of the matter that LeBron James only has 4 MVPs is embarrassing. And he hasn't won an MVP. LeBron James hasn't won the MVP since 2013, since he was in Miami. LeBron James hasn't won an MVP since he played for the Heat. Think about that. Russell Westbrook won the MVP because he had a triple-double. Well, he's since had triple-doubles and he didn't win the MVP. So you essentially said you gave him the MVP because of this, not because he was the most valuable. Because the Oklahoma City Thunder, they were solid teams. Steph Curry deserved MVPs. I'm not saying he didn't. But the fact that he was the only unanimous voter ever shows you that this award is just a sideshow bob. You're telling me that Steph Curry had the greatest season of all time, that he was the only unanimous guy? Ridiculous. Giannis Antetokounmpo won the award back-to-back years. Do you have a problem with that? I'm not saying I have a problem with it, but again, LeBron James should have been the MVP either last year, the year before that when James Harden won, the year before that when Russell Westbrook won. One of those years. You're telling me LeBron James only won 4. Derrick Rose won an MVP. Now, LeBron won it 1-2 years in a row. Then Derrick Rose won. Then LeBron won it 2 more times. The NBA is one of those leagues. It's like, well, he won it last year, so I can't vote for him again. No, you could vote for the same guy every single year because if he's the best and he's the most deserving, he should get it. So, Geoff, thanks for bringing that up. It struck a nerve. Mike, do you think Embiid is learning how to better protect himself playing with his injury? No, I thought that Hudrick brought up an interesting point that he's in a lot better shape, allowing him to be able to handle playing with this. So I don't know if he's learning to better protect himself. I think because he's still falling and flopping and sliding, and he's all over the place still. He's the most ungraceful 7-foot graceful. He's the most ungraceful yet graceful 7-footer. He does things that you've never seen a guy that size do, and yet he's always falling and flopping. He's not a flopper per se, but he's always just falling on the ground, and I don't know. But no, I don't think he's learning to protect himself better. I think he's in better shape. Mike, in game 3, I want a blowout. I want to be up by 30 by the end of the third and let Maxey and Shake get some fourth quarter playing time. That's an odd request that you want. You want to be up by 30 just to see Maxey and Shake get some time. If I'm up by 30 at the end of the third, I think I would much rather see what's the guy's name? Yeah, B-Ball Paul get some time. No, he wasn't. I want to see Rajon Tucker get some run out there. Give him a little burn. They're up by 30. Feel pretty good. Absolutely. It's not easy chasing Trae Young around, but the Sixers really made it tough on him. They sure did there, Danny boy. Oh, Danny boy. Yes, they did make it tough on him. It's almost as silly as Mariano Rivera being the only unanimous Hall of Fame inductee. Was it Mariano Rivera? Or was it Derek Jeter? Wasn't it Jeter that was the only unanimous Hall of Famer? Look, all right, we got coming up. What was on my mind that I wanted to bring up in this next segment? And by the way, Jokic, I want to get into his thing as his season as well because he deserves it. Oh, Joel Embiid did something last night. No other Sixer. Next. Final hour of the show, the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. I think if you look at this series moving forward, somebody mentioned in the chat, the pressure's on the Sixers. They got to get a game over in Atlanta. Not easy to do. But if you look at last night, there's some hints and some keys as to why they might be able to pull this thing off if they continue to do these couple things. Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Joel Embiid last night, a career high in the playoffs anyway, 40 points. He's the first Sixer player with 40 points in a playoff game since Allen Iverson had 45 back in 2003 against the Hornets in Game 6 of the first round. Embiid's the fourth Sixer player with a 40-point double-double in the playoffs. Only Wilt Chamberlain, Billy Cunningham, and Dolph Schayes did it. And Embiid has done something that no other Sixer has done, and that is he has scored 79 points in the series. It's the most in the first two playoff games in 76ers history. Think about that. Allen Iverson, Dr. J, Charles Barkley, Wilt Chamberlain, all the names that go back to the lineage. What Joel Embiid is doing right now is the most dominant performance in Sixers history. You are witnessing it right now. And I think there is when you talk about the keys or the clues or this or that, the Atlanta Hawks have simply no answer for him. No answer whatsoever for him. Until they figure out what they're going to do with Joel Embiid, I think the Hawks are in big trouble. They can shoot. They can do all they want. If they're not shooting, I told you the other night, they got to make 23s. They need every bit of 23s. And if they're not making their threes, they got no shot because they have no other way to score. They can't score on the inside. How many points do you see them score in the paint? They don't get into the paint. They can't score in the paint, and they can't stop the paint. The Sixers shot 82% on uncontested shots in Game 2. It's the best mark by a team in the postseason since 2017. They were 23 of 28. They were getting good looks. They were getting good shots off. And after being held scoreless in the first half, the Sixers bench in the second half scored all 26 of their points after halftime. The bench game was a big one because in the first half, the Sixers 0 for 6 from the field. In the second half, 10 of 15, 26 points, 4 of 7 for 3. Huge game, obviously, by Shake Milton. So we look at this. The Hawks had such a tough time running their offense when Trae Young got double-teamed in Game 2 compared to Game 1. And this is the big story. In Game 1, when the Sixers defense, defended and doubled Trae Young, they did it the same amount of times. In Game 1, they did it 17 times. In Game 2, they did it 18 times. In Game 1, it accounted for 22 points. In Game 2, he only got 11. The field goal percentage was 62% in Game 1. Last night, it was 42%. It forced 6 turnovers last night in only 3 in Game 1. It was an absolutely dominant performance by Ben Simmons on the defensive side of the ball. He absolutely took Trae Young out of the game, and it's something to build on. Because if you watch some of the key moments in that game, right, the key moments of that game last night, you see some of the mix-up in the defensive mindset by Philadelphia. They used Ben Simmons on Trae Young. They used Matisse Thybulle on Trae Young. They also did a lot different stuff with Trae Young. Trae Young would cross half court. They had the defender out on him that was getting screened. Atlanta likes to run the double screen. They like to bring those 2 screeners out. And what Philadelphia did is the first guy came out, got screened. The second guy went further out. In Game 1, he was back kind of around the foul line in the circle there. In Game 2, he was out a little bit past the 3-point line, which in turn, when Trae Young went off of the first screener, that second screener, the Sixers defender was much further out, and it forced Young further out. So just that little depth there, just that little change in the depth was a big, big difference in the Sixers defense last night. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Text messages, your phone calls, 609-573-3776, 609-573-ESPN, 609-573-3776. All right, over on the text board, Mike, 4 points, 3 shot attempts is not going to be good enough against the Nets. Probably not, but they're not playing the Nets. If you didn't notice, this is a different team. They're playing a team last night that they said, go defend Trae Young, take him out of the game. Don't worry about playing offense. If you didn't notice, Joel Embiid scored. I don't understand the whole 4 points and 3 shot attempts is not good enough. They scored 118 points. Now, you might say, what if Joel Embiid doesn't score 40? Well, that probably means that Ben Simmons scored more. Like the dispersing of the points, I don't understand why that matters. Because you're not going to get a night. If Joel Embiid scores 40, it's going to be tough for him to score 40, for Curry to score 20 plus, for Harris to score 20. What do you want them to score, 128? I mean, yeah, if they have to score 128, he's going to need to score more. They scored 118 points last night. It doesn't matter where the points come from. Right? It doesn't matter where the points come from. Yeah, you want him to score more points. But if the Sixers score 118 and play defense, they should win that game, especially in this series. Yeah, against the Nets, it might be a different story. You might say, Ben, look, we need you. I don't know who Ben Simmons would defend on the Nets. In this series, he's defending a much smaller guy. He's running around with a guy who's 6'1". I mean, in the next series, he might defend Kevin Durant. So they might not ask him. I mean, I know Durant's a dynamic offensive player. I'm not saying that he's not. But he's also not as quick and doesn't have the same, offensive game that Trae Young has. Young's a tough guy to run around with for us. People, Ben Simmons is 6'10". He's running around with a guy 6'1". James Harden's a little bigger. Harden's out tonight, by the way, or tomorrow is that game. I think it's tomorrow night, that game. So he's already out of game 3. It could be precautionary. It could be a big deal. I don't know. I just know he's not playing. What else we got? 609-403-0973. Look, is 4 points and 3 shot attempts exciting? No, it is not. But what it is what they got from him last night, and they didn't need him to do more. I don't understand why we can't just come to terms with that. You guys are dying for this guy to be LeBron James and Magic Johnson. You want him to be the greatest player in the history of the world. For whatever reason, that's not what he wants to do. Do they need more from him? Not last night, they didn't. So is it going to be enough against the Nets? Maybe. Joel Embiid scores 40, and Seth Curry scores what he did last night. I think he had 21. And Tobias Harris scores over 20. And Shake Milton comes off the bench and scores 14. Then you know what? It might be enough. If at the end of the game they play Nets and it's 118-117 and Ben Simmons does what he did last night, people will still complain. You can't do that in game 2. They can't do that in game 3. He can do whatever he wants as long as the team wins. You know why? Because text message guy is counting on Ben Simmons to score, and the Sixers are not. The message is clear from them. They're not counting on him to score. You are. You are counting on him to score. They are not. They have come to terms with that. Whatever he adds, he's the gravy guy. If he gets 14, great. If he gets 19, great. He scored 19 in game 1. They lost. I think he scored 19. Let me double check that before somebody plays the got you moment on me right here. I could have sworn Simmons scored 19 in game 1, but I might be wrong about that. In game one, Simmons scored 17. I'm sorry. He scored 17 in game one, and they lost. He scored 4 last night, and they won. I'll take 4. You can have 17 and the loss. I'll take 4 and the win. That's just me. And yes, I do agree with one thing you say in this text message. The Nets are playing better defense, and they should be rewarded for that. They should be given the props for that. Everybody bashed their defense, that they're a terrible defensive team. They have played much better defense in this series. 609-403-0973. Dan is in EHT. What's up, Dan? The Nets are Oklahoma City 2.0. Substitute Westbrook for Kyrie. Westbrook is an MVP. Oh, what point does that? What sense does that make? Westbrook was on Oklahoma City. I'm not substituting Westbrook. Oh, you're saying Kyrie for Westbrook, and then you have Harden and Durant. Oh, okay, yeah. I'm sorry, that's my bad. How many titles did the Thunder have there? You make an interesting point though. I can't believe I'm saying this. They had Harden, Durant, and Westbrook. And Serge Ibaka, right. They were a good team. They went to the finals. But it's a great example of having a lot of talent, but that a lot of talent doesn't win at a young age. I mean, they had Kevin Durant, James Harden on that team. And Westbrook, by the way, who was an MVP of the league. They had 3 league MVPs on that team. They didn't win a title. Why? It's a very young team, that Oklahoma City Thunder team. But you're saying Kyrie substitute for Westbrook. How many titles did they have? They're much wiser. They much wiser now. Very much so. The Kevin Durant is a bad man now. He is a much different player than he was at Oklahoma. Not player. I mean, he's just more polished than he was at Oklahoma City. 609-403-0973. Text board continuing. And let's go to the phones. My man Monday Marcus is going on. What's going on, Marcus?
Nice to hear from you, Mike. Callers said they wanted to call in like it was first week of Eagles training camp. real hot button. I want to talk, Mike. I want to talk. And then I'm listening. I'm like, well, where's all these callers at?
Hey, you know what? Text message is the way of the world. We got the people that watch the show now on the stream. They can just pop their messages in there.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if I'm too old. I still can't find you guys. I'm hoping the app works when I'm listening in my ear. I'll get Josh to walk me through it later, man. I won't need to waste the time on why I can't.
Watching the show is easy. You just go to YouTube. It's right there. Right. You go, boom, right.
Got it. What my point to it was is that last night was a great game to watch how the bench recovered. But what I had wrote to your text message, man, was that when they go on the road, they always say the others, which pretty much is the bench or the players you don't think of, even if you're talking about Danny Green, who won 3 yesterday.
Danny Green has been a disappointment in terms of this series, but I was saying this the other day. Like, Green has had some big moments and big shots for this team. I mean, even in the Wizards series, he had a couple games where he shot the ball really well.
No question. The one thing that I wanted to get to is that when this team goes home, I'm wondering if the confidence that we saw in our bench in the second half, and Maxey and Hill, that they're going to have that coming off the gates. And you can't go down to Atlanta and get down by 15, 20 points with the way that crowd is, with how Trae will just start shooting. And, the rest of the guys, too, Bogdanovich, the Humphreys or Hunter guy, he came in, started shooting too. Collins, like, they feed off
Herder.
And when they started making those
DeAndre Hunter's out.
Sorry. Right.
Yeah, you're right. Like the bench players, the role players play better at home. That's tried and true over history. Their shooters are, look, I said in game 1, they hit 23s. For them to win this series, they're going to have to make about 18 to 23s in the games. If they don't make it, like last night, they made 11 threes. They shot their average, and it wasn't good enough. They have to be better than their average is to win this series, I think, anyway.
No, I do, and I agree with you on the point about they don't have anybody to stop Pete. I mean, Capella looked at him after he got the alley-oop dunk, and then Pete just muscled him in there and put it down. I don't know if
they have no answer there, Marcus. They have no answer for Embiid.
Yeah, they got no answer, and I just wonder if I didn't hear it. I was listening to it on the radio. But I don't know if they could have an agitator like a Gallinari get Embiid under his skin or push him. You know how, when Shaq used to get fouled and he'd get upset the next thing.
Gallinari don't want any smoke. Are you kidding me?
They both got technicals. I know it's not even close to having them beat it out of the game, but I'm making sure that, I don't want to say no cheap shot. And I bring that up because in the last 4 minutes, he was still in the game. And I wondered why, if they're up by 16 and you got this guy with this possible tour meniscus playing well, 40 points. Was that the MVP thing? Was that he wanted him another standing ovation at the 2-minute mark?
Yeah.
I didn't get why Embiid was still in the game at that point. That's the only question I had about Doc last night. I don't know if you agree or not.
I thought the same thing too, but I also felt like they said we have to have this. We cannot let this game go out.
They were up by 16.
Yeah, but you know what? You got Trae Young. Like you got Trae Young. He was shooting ice cold. He was 1 for 7. It only takes him, 2 late threes to get right back in that thing.
They could have had Steph, Reggie Miller, and any other three-point shooter. They're not going to come back with 18 points, with 4 minutes left. And B needed to be getting that warm pack on that knee, get the ovation.
Well, by the way, keep this in mind too, though, Marcus. They sat and beat out until almost the 7-minute mark of the fourth. They kept him out a long time in that fourth quarter, so he got a long time to sit out.
I thought he wasn't coming back.
I know.
That was the point. It's like you sat him out, and if you know anything with injuries or soreness, you got to get that thing worked back up. So now you work it back up, but he didn't need to be in the game. And all I'm saying is, I know everybody's like, well, what if he got hurt? Point being is that if it's not needed, let him get the rest. They don't play till Friday.
Here's a question for you. Well, look, you got the 2 days off, but that's another thing. Right. They had 2 days off, so I think that factored into, hey, we got 2 days off. Give me 2 more. You know what I mean? Like maybe that factored. But here's a question for you. Right now, of the starters, who leads the Sixers in 3-point shooting in the playoffs?
Who leads them in 3-point shooting? Percentage or just makes?
Percentage.
Percentage? I mean, since you're throwing it out, it's probably going to be Embiid, but I would say Curry at the moment, I would think.
It's Embiid is actually at 43%, but next up is Danny Green is hitting 40% of threes. He hit 3 and 5. And then he hit another game with 3 in the he had 3, 1, 5, and 3 in the Washington series.
Right, if you count both series. I mean, listen,
I'm just saying, Danny Green. I'm saying in the first series he had 5 of 9 to 1 game from 3. So it's hard to say.
Great.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They can't get Curry and Green going together at the same time. It feels like they just never get if they're both going at the same time, teams are going to be in some trouble.
Yeah, but like I said, he was getting that work by Trae in that first game.
Oh, yeah.
I heard what the first play was. Like, he snatched the ball out, went, dunked on him. Like, I felt like he came out saying, at least from the defensive standpoint, if my shot's not going, I'm going to be more in front of you than I was.
Yeah. By the way, Marcus, you send a text into the text board. I will text you the link to the video show. How's that?
You are the man. Keep it up, Michael.
Oh, man. Appreciate it. 609-403. 0973 609-403-0973. Mike, you're not beating the Nets with Shake Milton and Seth Curry. I guess Ben's just going to hit the switch against the Nets. Shake Milton, I would say no. Seth Curry is that's part of who they are, is Joel Embiid inside dominating you. The Nets have no answer for Joel Embiid. They got less of an answer for Joel Embiid than this team does. I mean, they got a couple of clowns and the guy who is at the rodeo playing center. I mean, the Nets have no answer for Joel Embiid. So you got Embiid's going to score 35 to 40 points a game against them. Tobias Harris has to do what he does, and then Green and Curry make their threes. That's their offense. Embiid, Harris, the 2 3-point shooters. In the regular season, it was Milton off the bench, and then it's Ben Simmons. Simmons is lower on the list of priority scorers. Shake and bake got her done last night. The great thing is it can be someone different every night. Maybe Friday it's Curry with 30 or Harris takes over, or maybe even Simmons takes that one. See, that's a good point, Rich and Mays Landing. One night, Simmons might score 30. The next night, he might score 4. They don't need him to score. It's like the Bucks. They need him to score. They need Giannis to score. Otherwise, they got no shot. The Sixers don't need him. People like that guy texting in, you are stuck in this mindset that they need Ben Simmons to score. And the Sixers are saying you're an idiot. And just like I am. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Mike, a guy on a Supermax contract, you should expect more than just defense. No, not necessarily. Go ask Rudy Gobert how his contract looks. How many does he score? Rudy Gobert's got a Supermax. He's the defensive player of the year. They don't ask him to score. I mean, just because the guy's the number one pick, we talked about this yesterday, we have this thought in our head that because this is where you were picked, that you have to be the only number one pick that we looked at over the last X amount of years that has really turned into a mega superstar is LeBron James. That's it. Many number one picks turned out to be okay players. But because he was the number one pick, we have this thought in our head that he's got to be LeBron James. There's only one LeBron James. That's it. If you want him to be LeBron James, yes, you're going to be disappointed. And by the way, he's probably the closest thing other than the fact that LeBron will shoot a little bit more and, he'll score 22 points a game. This Sixers team has built a team that says, I don't need you to score. People like you want them to score. And the Sixers have said, we don't care if you score. And they keep winning. They won a game last night where he scored 4. They lost a game when he scored 17. All right, when we come back, Geoff Kerr's here. Little NFL. The Eagles made a variety of roster moves today. Why? He has the answer. Coming up next on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. All right, 528 on the Sports Bash, brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Geoff Kerr's back from CBS Sports, covers the NFL. Eagles made a couple of moves today, some other things we want to get into as the offseason continues. We will certainly be looking ahead to all of the offseason stuff in terms of breaking down and previewing all the divisions and leading you right. You know what's funny, Geoff? I know you were at the Sixer game last night, right? You wait. Did you go last night or did you sell your tickets last night?
I actually went to games 1 and 2, so I've been to both.
All right, so you went last night. The NBA is literally the last day of the finals is July 22nd if it goes 7 games. You have the Olympics right after that with the basketball. The Summer League is from August 8th through the 17th or something like that, which will take you right to the first preseason game. So you're going to have a lot of basketball leading right into football season this year. So that's good. A lot of action happening there, but there's still a whole heck of a lot happening. We know there's some trades that are still possibly out there, but let's look at what happened today with the Eagles. I thought it was interesting that Jamie Newman was interesting. They decided to release him. They don't even have a third quarterback here. Is that how bad he was?
It has to be. I didn't even get a vibe on Jamie Newman was playing that bad. I mean, you gave him an opportunity from Wake Forest. Remember he was at Wake Forest and he went to Georgia, and he had a crazy draft journey to begin with. He left the year early to go into the draft. He was the only undrafted free agent that didn't get any guaranteed money. So I guess that shouldn't surprise any of us. Eagles let him go, but they must have a better third quarterback option than Jamie Newman at this point. I think they said to themselves, look, this guy isn't worth wasting on our practice squad. He's definitely not worth a 53-man roster spot. So why do we have him?
No, right? I mean, I guess you figure, hey, this guy has no shot. You usually go with 4 guys, right? You'll go with 4 arms.
Yeah, usually. So there's got at least 2 quarterbacks. I think they're going to get a veteran quarterback in there. I really do. I don't know who's left. I'm going to have to look that up. I should have looked that up before I came on here. But, yeah, that's what was mind-boggling. I did an Eagles depth chart today, and I'm like, is Jamie Newman really going to make this team? Well, he's not. So, yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah, another guy who is not going to make the team is Trevon Grimes, who, he was the guy that everybody, was going to be gushing about, I would imagine, at training camp and wanted to make the team. But how come he's not making the team? Well, he's not even going to get a chance to get to training camp. It looks like an injury wave situation.
Yeah, you know what, Mike? That's one thing about social media. And look, I love it. I love when we can get as much content out there as possible, especially with players. But we have to remember stuff like guys like Trevon Grimes. Yeah, they look good in highlight reels and stuff like that. But there's a reason why these guys don't make rosters or why they're undrafted. And I don't know what the deal with Trevon Grimes actually was. I mean, he looked like a very promising prospect, but if he's waived injured, that means that there was an injury that crept up on him. And that's probably why the guy went undrafted in the first place. So, he got an injury settlement there, and, maybe the Eagles give him another shot down the line, but, it looks like this injury is going to keep him out a little bit. I mean, why would you put the guy on waived injured list in June?
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit and then Khalil Tate was a guy, was a quarterback at Arizona in terms of college, and then came here, tried to play wide receiver as another guy they kind of move on from. But obviously, they like their young wide receiver room because they got rid of 2 guys today that were, you would think there was going to be a lot of competition, and I guess they decided these 2 guys are not going to be a part of that competition.
Yeah, I thought Trevon Grimes was going to give J.J. Arcega-Whiteside a run for his money. In fact, I even wrote about that this morning. And, lo and behold, I guess J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, now that he's healthy, away from the COVID stuff, maybe he looks like the second-round pick the Eagles thought they were getting, or the player that we saw in the 2019 preseason. That's a really good sign for guys like him, John Hightower, Kez Watkins, guys like that. It does look like now that these guys have a future on this team. Same with Greg Ward.
And I look at over at CBS Sports, Geoff puts out his projected roster heading into training camp for the Eagles. And you have, to me, it says Travis Fulgham. You have him as your starting wide receiver. Rager, Fulgham, Smith. And Aaron Moorhead said about Fulgham, no, this guy's the real deal. You don't do what he did last year. That's not a flash in the pan.
Yeah, I agree. And that's basically what I was basing. That was what I was basing it off of. What Aaron Moorhead said on, I think it was Tuesday he talked. So And, I'm putting up the depth chart. And I'm like, well, Travis Fulgham checks all the boxes here because you got Devonta Smith who could play an X. You got Greg Ward who could play the slot, or Jalen Reagor who could play the slot. So you're looking there, and I know these guys are going to interchange, but I'm like, you kind of need that big body receiver that can catch balls downfield a little bit or catch those high possession balls. And that's where Travis Fulgham comes in. And look, I can't dismiss the 5 games he made for this football team in 2020. I mean, it's just not, a Chris T. Jones type of thing that he just falls off the face of the earth. There has to be some talent there. I just think too much success came too quick for Travis Fulgham. And ultimately, he had to learn what happens when defenses press him. Now that he's got better receivers around him, maybe the numbers go back up.
Little Chris T. Jones reference there. That was nice.
Yeah,
Nate Brown coming up next.
Hey, do you remember my famous story about Nate Brown? Well, I shouldn't say my famous. It's Andy Reid's famous story.
I do not.
Remember when Andy Reid in 2001 said he didn't drop a pass the whole camp in the first play of the regular season against the Rams? There's a slant to Nate Brown. He's wide open. And what does he do? He drops it.
There was some bad wide receiver play back. Reggie Brown was actually decent for a year, got a contract, and then stunk the rest of his existence.
I don't get it. He had to get hurt. Like, you just don't fall at the face of the earth like he did.
Oh, Reggie Brown?
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, he was a second-round pick, had a good rookie year, and then just absolutely vanished. Now,
he was really good in 2006, too, and for, the first half of 2007. Then you're right. Then he just fell at the face of the earth.
Man, yeah.
Tampa, and that was it.
I see in your projected Week 1 starters, you do have Zach Ertz. Is that because he's still on the roster, or are you projecting that he will be on the roster?
He's still on the roster. That's how I'm basing it all. It's on everybody who's on the roster now. So I did that with the Texans too. I mean, technically Deshaun Watson is still the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans. So that's how I base it off. So I'm looking at it as, okay, Zach Ertz is here, Dallas Goedert's here. Right now they're 1-2. If Zach Ertz isn't here, then we got to figure out who's going to be the number 2 tight end for this team, as we discussed last week. And I hope they kind of sign Richard Rodgers back. I think that would be a nice addition for that. If they do, whether they keep Zach Ertz or not, it's going to be a very deep tight end room.
Yeah, it's funny because, I look at your tight ends. You got Ertz, Goddard, Kroom, Wilson, Stoll. A lot of people, I think, like Stoll. Butler's a guy I liked coming out of college as the wideout at Iowa State, but they moved him to tight end. He's a big guy, but that whole tight end room, a lot of unproven players in there, that's for sure. Let's look at your offensive line because you have Mailata being Dillard there, and I would imagine that's the most interesting one. But does Dickerson have a shot to beat Seumalo? Do you think they would make that a legit opening?
I think so. I think Nick Sirianni, as we said earlier, he embraces competition. I think Landon Dickerson, and now granted, if he's healthy, I don't know if he's going to be back by the time training camp starts, or I mean, because what's that going to be? 9 months since he tore his ACL in December? Less than 9 months, 8 months. So again, we'll see how he progresses. That's why I think Seumalo is ultimately going to win the job, because Dickerson won't be ready. But I think Dickerson is going to compete, and he's going to be that number 6 offensive lineman going forward. And that's for Jordan Mailata. This is how I'm looking at it. Based on the body of work from last year, Mailata gets the starting gig right now.
And then after listening to Jeff Stoutland today, I mean, he was gushing about Jack Driscoll and Nate Herbig. So they really like the depth of this offensive line. Plus, they got LaRaven Clark. Matt Pryor's a guy who has started some games for them. We know Dillard, if he doesn't end up starting, he's a first-round pick. They really like Dickerson. So there's a lot of depth on this team.
It's crazy to think that LaRaven Clark, who played a bunch of meaningful snaps for the Colts last year, may not make the Eagles. That's how deep they are.
All right, let's look at this defensive side of the ball that you have over at CBS Sports. Couple interesting ones here is obviously I look at the linebacker, Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson there. Davion Taylor, he was a third-round pick last year. Some people, I wonder, does Davion Taylor automatically make the team this year?
He has to show me something. Sean Bradley, I think he makes the Eagles. The 6th-round pick was a linebacker. I think he makes the Eagles because he was going special teams this year. But Davion Taylor, that's all he played with special teams. And look, the Eagles aren't afraid to cut third-round picks in year 2. Remember Curtis Marcy did that too. Byron Smith, I think they did. Maybe it was year 3 they cut him. I remember that was a controversial pick by Andy Reid. I mean, he's got to show this team something. Bottom line. And here's the good thing. The linebacking room isn't that deep. I mean, outside of Singleton and Wilson, there's a lot of open drops
here, though. Like Jannard Avery, they moved from end to linebacker, and he's a guy they traded a 4th-round pick for. So does he is he one of those guys that we got to keep him because we traded some for? Then you got Jacoby Stevens. Is he going to be in the linebacker room or out? Joe Ostman, he's another guy that's kind of turned into like an Avery. He was an end, now they moved him to linebacker. So there's a lot of weird things that they're going to have to kind of take under consideration. The Avery one's really weird. They gave him a 4th-round pick and then changed his positions after.
Well, here's the thing with Avery. You can move him to linebacker, but what if there happens to be an injury on the edge again? Then you just move him back. So it shows versatility. Remember, Brandon Graham played linebacker for a little bit too, which was still really bizarre, and he was very productive as a linebacker when he was kind of that pass rushing linebacker. But yeah, I'm intrigued by the Avery thing, the Ostman thing. I think Avery has a better shot sticking than Ostman does, though.
All right, Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports. Check out his stuff over at cbssports.com, and he's got all the depth charts. We'll be talking about those over the next couple of weeks here as we get you ready for the offseason through the summer. And, hey, we still have to figure out what's going to happen with, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he has not shown. Now, it's funny because, some people are like, he'll be there at training camp time. We'll see how that thing all plays out because they're getting Jordan Love. I guess they're saying that he's definitely ready to go in week number 1. And if you're the Packers, at what point do you just say, look, if he doesn't want to be here, we're not going to give him to someone else. We're not going to let him, just let him not play.
Exactly, and I think that's what they're going to do. Look, if Aaron Rodgers wants to forfeit $35 million, then that's his right. That's what he wants to do. I wouldn't just give him away to another team. And you don't train him
give him away to another team to let him be in the league. Just okay, you don't want to play? Fine.
Yeah, exactly. Retire. Do what Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson did. Just retire.
Yeah, I agree with that. If I'm the Packers at this point, I have you under contract. If you don't want to play, we'll fine you, and you're not going to be in the league. We're not going to just let you go someplace else and play for that team. Just don't play. They have an answer there. It's not like they have no answer. They drafted a guy in the 1st round. He let him step in and play.
As great as Aaron Rodgers was last year, I was a little disappointed in him in the NFC Championship game. I honestly thought he should have played better. And that's nitpicking a little bit, but that's something that front offices can use against him. They're like, well, look, what did you do when we got to those NFC Championship games? You didn't actually do much. It's unfortunate because he's been so good the last 2 years.
All right, is it fair or foul that the Broncos are putting Peyton Manning in their ring of fame?
I think it's fair. He did, he set the passing touchdown record and the passing yardage record for Denver. He was really good there for 3 years. And was he the ultimate reason they won a Super Bowl in 2015? No, it was the defense. I've talked to plenty of defensive players on that Denver team about that. But Peyton Manning was still their leader. I think it is fair that Peyton Manning is in the Denver Broncos Ring of Honor. I really do.
All right. Do you anticipate, Geoff, seeing any more trades this offseason?
I think we'll see. I mean, if you're going in general, yes. If you're talking about quarterbacks, I think we might see at least 1 or 2 more.
Or I mean, like Jordan Hicks' name has come up. You've got obviously Zach Ertz, Chandler Jones,
Gardner Minshew. He might be one.
Gardner Minshew's another good one there. Gilmore, we heard a little bit about him.
Yeah, I honestly think we're going to see some trade. Not in the next month or so. I mean, it could happen. I mean, Julio Jones got traded this week, but these teams are still in minicamp. But maybe in July or August, when teams are assembling their rosters and teams get desperate, I think that's when we'll definitely see some more trades.
All right, Sports Bash Live. And by the way, this I think this Deshaun Watson thing, you mentioned him a little while back. That this Deshaun Watson thing might pick up a little bit because I guess one of his former teammates said that Watson wants to be in Denver. So you're going to probably, and we know Denver, that quarterback thing is going to be up for grabs there. Can you imagine if Deshaun Watson's like, I want to go play in Denver, and they end up, that you have Deshaun Watson, Locke, and Bridgewater out there, and who knows what's going to happen with Watson, I guess. I mean, this whole thing still needs to play out.
Well, yeah, we still have to wait for the legal process to play out, but it's funny because about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, we were thinking Deshaun Watson might get traded for 3 first-round picks minimum. Maybe at this point, Denver may only have to give up 1 first-round pick. They may not even have to give a first-round pick if they want Deshaun Watson. Here, we'll just take the contract and we'll take the shot. Whatever happens, happens.
Right. All right. Jeff Kerr at Jeff Kerr CBS. Read more from him over at CBS Sports. Click on the NFL tab, and you can get all of Jeff's NFL coverage right there. The Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. As mini camps are continuing this week, we'll continue to cover them on Friday here with Jeff on 97.3. What was the atmosphere in that place like last night?
It was loud. I thought Sunday my ears were about to explode because they tried to make it too loud because they were down. But last night it was just a more natural reaction, especially when Shake. I got a funny story, Mike. So I'm a big proponent of shooting. Being a basketball coach and stuff, and I study shooting a lot. As soon as that ball went out, Shake's hands, that 3-pointer at the buzzer, I knew that was going in.
I said every shot he took last night after he made that first one, when he made that first three. He looked like the Shake Milton on Saturday afternoon against the Clippers that day.
Yeah.
He just made everything.
Yeah, I remember Doc Rivers was like gushing over him when he was coach of the Clippers. I'm like, man, Shake Milton. Maybe Shake Milton could be something. He looked like the Shake Milton from December to the end of January.
We'll see. I'm interested to see if he's back in the rotation now and how Doc Rivers kind of uses all that.
I will say this. I know I'm a Sixers fan too, but it's really driving me nuts when I was watching Inside the NBA last night when I got home. And everybody still thinks, the Sixers are going to lose in 6. And then you go on ESPN and it's the same thing. I'm like, guys, did you not watch the last 6 quarters? Sixers have flat out dominated this team.
Well, they still have no answer for Joel Embiid. So until they figure that out, it's going to be tough for them to win this thing. All right, Jeff, Friday it is.
Yep. All right, Mike, I'll see you Friday.
All right, Jeff Kerr, like all guys, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline as we get you ready for game night tonight in 15 minutes. Dave Weinberg is back for Weinberg Wednesday. I always enjoy listening to Dave's insights. Dave's got a great podcast, too, called Touchdowns and Tequila, or Tequila and Touchdowns, I believe it is. Always got to check him out. All right, coming up, sound of the day. Wrapping up a Wednesday show. Back tomorrow, Keith Smith previews this series and the NBA playoffs. Adam Kaplan on the NFL. And we'll have plenty more on a Thursday show. That's tomorrow. Sound next. All right, here we go. The sound of the day. Good guest on the show as always, McGarry. Fitz was good today. I enjoyed talking to Jason Fitz. He's a very smart dude. Hudrick, Mosher, Geoff Kerr right there. Jason Fitz, you'll hear him tonight on Spain and Fitz at 7 o'clock here on 97.3 ESPN.
I think what we've seen from Philly also has to partially be, hey, when you've got the stars, believe in the stars and stop listening to the outside noise about what stars are or are not capable of, but buy into the two guys that can build something around and build yourself a championship team. Just keep changing the other pieces and the coaches until you get it right.
That's an interesting. He's basically saying, buy into your stars. Well, some people aren't sure if Ben Simmons is a star, right? Isn't that the biggest conversation? Isn't that the most debatable thing? Is Ben Simmons, the star that you can build around?
Well, it gets back to what you said earlier, Mike. We have created these definitions for who these players are and what they're supposed to be. Does anybody doubt that Dennis Rodman was a star? Does anybody doubt that Dikembe Mutombo was probably one of the most famous centers in the league in the 90s, early 2000s? Those guys were still all-star players, but they weren't scorers. And people have had this attitude that because Ben Simmons was drafted number 1 overall, he has to be something, when they forget, as you said, Mike, that a lot of these number 1 overall picks, they're not superstars.
Well, that's another thing. This whole number 1 pick, he's got to change the franchise. You lost to get him. Even teams that didn't lose on purpose, they got the number 1 pick. The number 1 pick has changed very few teams. We looked at this the other day about what number 1 picks have changed the complexion of the franchise. You know what I mean? Just made that team.
There's only a couple in the last 20 years that were number 1 overall picks that led their teams to the NBA Finals. And that in of itself should tell you that people need to stop acting like the top pick is going to be a difference maker.
If we go back to LeBron obviously changed the complexion of the team and
Correct.
The league.
Yes.
Okay. The next first-round pick overall, Dwight Howard, he went to a finals with Orlando, but he didn't really change the complexion of the team.
He changed the organization. He did do that. He didn't change the league, though. He just changed the organization.
Right, but they never won a championship with him.
Never did.
Right. Andrew Bogut, obviously
Next.
not. Andre Bargnani.
Next.
Greg Oden got hurt.
That's a good joke.
Derrick Rose
won an MVP.
He won it,
but they never got to the finals.
No, but he did change the Bulls. They were the first post-Jordan Bulls to really they were a number 1 seed, and he got hurt.
Right.
So that's a tough one.
But he won MVP.
He did win an MVP. Blake Griffin. I mean
that was underwhelming.
Him being to the Clippers, the whole organization was kind of changing. He was part of the changing, but it wasn't because we got Blake Griffin that we are now.
That was because they got Chris Paul.
Right, exactly. John Wall.
Very good player, but meh. Next.
Kyrie Irving.
Not till LeBron got there.
Right. They were terrible. And then when LeBron got there, and Kyrie's a good player. This isn't saying he's not, but he didn't change the complexion of the Cavaliers.
Correct.
Anthony Davis didn't really change the complexion of the Hornets. They became a playoff team,
right,
but not a title contender.
Correct.
Anthony Bennett was a bust. Andrew Wiggins is just a
nice player.
Yeah. Karl Anthony Towns. He hasn't changed. He's a very good player, but has not changed the complexion of the Timberwolves.
They got to the postseason once. That was Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler leaves, nothing.
Ben Simmons.
We know that story.
So, but all the guys I just said, they all have.
There's 2 guys. Well, maybe 3 if you include Derrick Rose.
Markelle Fultz, obviously a bust.
Out.
DeAndre Ayton is not changing the franchise. He's the
3rd best player on that team.
He is a very good player.
But he's the 3rd best player on that team.
He's almost their Ben Simmons. He's very good, but he doesn't do it in the scoring manner.
Correct.
Zion, jury's out.
Jury's out for sure.
And Anthony Edwards, jury's really out. Before that, though, this is a good conversation that we can go back on. Number 1 picks, what they do to your franchise. I think we can go back to 90. Derek Coleman, good player. Didn't change the franchise. Larry Johnson, good player, didn't change. I mean, he made the Hornets better.
Kwame Brown. Michael Olowokandi.
There were some bad ones in there for a little while. Shaquille O'Neal obviously changed the franchise.
Yes.
Chris Webber did not. Glenn Big Dog Robinson made them better, but wasn't, So the number one pick thing we got to let go is the point. Dave Weinberg's up next. Game night's up next. And I'm back tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.